Everybody, another edition of MMA Junkie Radio here on the way. This is MMA Junkie Radio's pre-show, the show before the show. Yay! I am Goes. Thanks, John. That is John Morgan. That's Gorgeous George. That's Dan Tom. And the voice you hear in your head, that's Danny Okers. Confirm it.
That me.
One of the voices you may be hearing in your head. We had a lot of listeners, Goes. A lot of listeners.
Yeah.
Danny got a new phone today. Danny called me in a panic because he was going to be only 1 hour early to the show today.
Oh, wow. FYI. What kind of phones you get?
I just got my phone replaced. It's a new version of the iPhone 7.
Okay.
My phone crapped out on me when at the worst possible time, I was using the GPS driving back from visiting my dad over the weekend.
Oh, jeez.
So it just all of a sudden just stopped working, and they ran tests for over an hour, a little less than 2 hours, and finally determined that it was on them. So they just had to give me a new phone.
Oh, wow. Like
yeah,
that?
it's never happened. Yeah, it's never happened before. No deductible, no nothing. Just, all right, we screwed it up.
I just imagine Danny walking out of a store, looking over his shoulder, like nobody's going to tackle me.
Yeah.
You sure?
You guys want to hear the best broken phone story I've ever heard?
Let's hear it.
Yes.
Does it involve bathroom
Frank
stuff?
Trigg had his phone, walking like this, about to cross the street, dropped it, and as he was walking, kicked it into the street, car ran it over.
Wow.
And actually,
strong.
Sammy the Squid might be number 2, right?
When he let the girl see his phone,
Yeah, the brand new phone.
She dropped it right into one of those tall glasses of beer, and it was just floating like an ice cube bouncing around.
No.
He didn't get mad or anything. He just gave her like a Frank Mir face. Like that made no sense. He carefully fished it out and just continued on. Cause
did it work after that? The whole rice thing and all that.
Alright, guys, coming up.
I don't think he did rice. I just
Stand
think
by.
he just
Just
chalked
done.
it up for a loss. But I think he was so further along with the chick that he thought this is worth it to figure this out first.
This is your captain speaking. We are making our descent into Las Vegas McCarran Airport. On behalf of our crew, we'd like to thank you for flying MMA Junkie Airlines. Now please fasten your seatbelts and put your tray tables in your upright position because the descent is going to be a little bit bumpy.
Alright, Junkie Nation, it's time to roll, baby, on MMA Junkie Radio with Gorgeous George and Gold. This is what we doing while we do it, baby. All night long, we rollin'! Yeah!
The MMA Junkie Radio revolution is upon us.
Can you dig it?
There's no escape. No escape. Through the vast frontier of cyberspace and through a sea of stars in outer space.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We've solidified our combat communications stranglehold.
We are controlling transmission.
With the use of MMA Junkie Radio and Sirius XM satellite radio technology. MMA Junkie Radio. Commence transmission. Live from MMA Junkie Radio HQ in the fight capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. Here are your hosts, Gorgeous George and Go.
From the fight capital of the world inside the beautiful Mandalay Bay Race and Sportsbook, you are listening to the MMA Junkie Radio Show, the only show that matters. I'm your host, Gorgeous George. With me as always is the devious and dastardly Goes, our ace co-host. To my left, the fight analyst, Dan Tom, joins us back east with a new iPhone, and it didn't cost him a penny, Danny Otto, and sitting to my far right, John Morgan, the 2009 Journalist of the Year, recent nominee in that category. What's up, guys?
What up, man? Happy to be back from Boise, Idaho, as I have learned it is properly called.
Boise.
Oh, really?
Boise, yes.
Boise.
40 years into my life.
Boise or C?
C.
Boise. Boise, Idaho.
Boise. Say it with the S.
All right, Boise, Idaho.
Boise.
40 years into my life, I finally
Did you like
figured
it?
out. Boise. God damn it. Boise is a fantastic place, actually. It's an underrated spot. If you ever get a chance to go up there, man. Cool people. Super clean town, man. It was weather was beautiful while we were there. Amazing potatoes, as you would expect.
Potatoes.
But yeah, man, and the fight card was fun, man. I had a good time that week. You know, the main event didn't quite probably go out on the high note that we hoped, but overall, I thought there were some real interesting storylines and some good fights, and I thought it was a good week.
Now, Ben Folks is in Montana, right?
Right.
So, did he come down for the fights?
No.
No, okay. I figured his neck of the woods maybe.
No, he likes
might be your Vice P, no?
He likes to stay home.
Okay.
I was rolling solo this week.
All right. So, yes, 2 cards to talk about with Bellator 202 and 203. 2 champions defended there. And, of course, UFC Boise, also known as UFC Fight Night 133. Where do you guys want to start? I think we got to go to JDS and Blagoy even off, and then we'll give those champs some proper due over at Bellator, because that traffic was popping, so people love them some Bellator.
Yeah.
All right. Junior Dos Santos and Blagoy Ivanov goes. What'd you think?
It just lacked momentum. You know, it wasn't the worst fight ever, but every time it seemed like something was going to happen, it just didn't. So it was just kind of tough to end the night. And like John said, I thought overall it was a fun card, but anytime you end the night that way, you leave a card not feeling as great.
What'd you think, John?
I agree. I mean, I think I understood JDS, like, kind of the way, I mean, his jab was working, footwork. I mean, you saw things out of him you wanted to see, but Blagoy, when he would throw back and counter me, he was throwing hard. So it's not like JDS could just be like, oh, I'm just going to run in here guns blazing and get this done, you know? It was a tough week for Junior, man. All week long, he kind of admitted this whole USADA situation where he basically had his character called into question, a guy that stood against, against doping. He stood in favor of anti-doping, then to get flagged. It was embarrassing for him, and it was frustrating for him, and it cost him a lot of money. It cost him a lot of time. And I think, there were some frustrations. I think this was a type of performance that it was flat, but it was necessary. He had to get in there. Look, everything was on him, right? Blagoy didn't have anything to lose. I mean, everything was on JDS. So I think for him to come in there, yes, it was a little flat, but he got the win that he needed to kind of get back in there and kind of get himself, his name back in the mix of everything. And I think I saw some good things out of Junior, but yeah, the fight itself just kind of fell flat. But that didn't ruin the night for me. I thought there was this was a sneaky good card, man. I said it going into the week, and man, I felt like leaving it. It showed up.
I'll say this: I felt like Junior was that a kid that gets in trouble at home, and Blagoy was the mom who wanted to smack him with a newspaper or something. But because I don't know what was wrong, like Blagoy would hit him, and it would affect JDS. You could tell he was like, "Whoa, I didn't like that." Yep. But I don't know if it's like a lack of athleticism or that plodding style where he just it looked like he'd hit him, try and catch him, go let's reset, let me catch you, boom, hit him, and then reset. I think if he just had some more quickness in his footwork or the ability to just trap, maybe he could have followed up, because a couple of those times JDS in the way he would move would also use the cage as a guide, kind of like to get his bearings straight. But I want to see a little bit more athleticism out of Blagoy, because if he's just going to plod like that, it's not going to work against some of the quicker, light-footed heavyweights. Look, now that said, I thought JDS came out with the type of win where, and I love me some JDS, former champ, he's got stock. But I thought had he blasted Ivanov, which I thought he was going to do after round 1, I thought, okay, it's just a matter of time. That's where you go and say, hey, we're building Dallas, Texas, JDS versus somebody in that co-main. You start talking about like a big fight for him, and he will get a big fight, and we will discuss that on the Daily Debate. But because there wasn't a finish, it's like you start to look and see what else you got out there to fill out that co-main, and let's just give JDS a main card slot. It's like he lacked a little bit of that pop and momentum for his next fight that he could have gained for himself.
He was coming into the fight calling for the Stipe trilogy, and I don't think he necessarily got himself that fight. It's but again, I think it was just one of those things. He needed to get back in the mix. He needed to put the pain of everything he had been through behind and just get a win. And you said it with Blagoy. I'm a little concerned. I don't know how well he's going to do in the UFC's heavyweight division. He's a guy that you and we've been following for a while, but the more casuals might not have been. But he's been around. But I don't know, man. I thought it was a weird decision for him to leave PFL right before the start of the $1 million season.
I know.
And now, seeing that type of performance, because you said it. I mean, he's got pop. Man, I don't know if you saw the post-fight interview with Junior, but his face was messed up, man.
He turns into a Simpson character.
There's
a few of them that do, like him and Claudia Gadelia. I don't know if it's the mouthpiece or if they just their lips.
He got busted up, but as you said, I mean, every time Blagoy would catch him, then you're like, you got to follow up on that, and he couldn't get to him.
Dan, what did you think of the main event?
Yeah, I mean, you guys said a lot of great points. All I can really add to it is something just talking to John on the way in here. It's just there's so much delineation in these heavyweight fights. We're talking about Ngannou and Lewis. I'm not trying to compare those two. I think that's unfair to Blagoy and Dos Santos, but As far as these odds makers trying to set the over and under, most of the times you're going to find plus money, obviously, for a heavyweight fight going over because that just seems so rare. But it almost, makes you readjust where you kind of got to look at it and go, okay, well, we can't just look at the, Junior Dos Santos' highlight reel and expect that he's going to do that every time out. He's also had those decisions where he can, outpace and just out-jab a guy, and he's perfectly okay with doing that for up to 5 rounds, right? So we've seen that before. And kind of with the Ngannou thing that I think is worth a comparison, Ngannou talked about his psyche about coming in, how that carried with him. That's natural for that to happen. It seems unnatural for such a big hulking character to associate that fear with. But not only that, even an experienced guy like a Dos Santos, right? Who's not just big and hulking, but he's got the experience. Even he can, you come off a TKO loss, a layoff, all these things kind of that was working against him, and maybe we shouldn't have been so surprised that this was the outcome.
It's a roll of the dice, guys, because Ngannou and Lewis should have ended early, and it didn't. And if you look at Miocic and Cormier, I think a lot of people were thinking that one was going to go, into the championship rounds. Miocic has just done that with Ngannou, and Cormier in his big fights has tended to go to the distance, even as a heavyweight. I remember him going the distance with Barnett as well, and then all of a sudden that ends in the first round. It's like you can never really figure it out, which is why we all tune in. But
I think from a business standpoint, when you have a guy like Blagoy come into the organization, you have to figure out whether or not this guy's going to contend for a title, or if he's going to become that guy that helps you build other guys on their way to the title. And I think he had a good enough showing against JDS where he's probably going to serve as that guy that's going to help build other stars, but I don't think he showed us that he has what it takes to actually contend for the title.
So I would just say, Blagoy, put on your hard hat and your lunch pail because you're going to be building other guys for the rest of your career.
Unless he has something crazy happen in the next fight, he didn't show enough there.
In the co-main event, Sage Northcutt defeated Zack Otto. Otto had a moment there where he could have ended it early, and that underdog ticket could have cashed. Northcutt, to his credit, who, by the way, you could see he was out. His eyes rolled back, and it looked like he could have been done at that particular moment. Came back and got himself a nice win.
Yeah, it was great. No, listen, I like this from Sage. I enjoyed it because Sage going into this fight, he was 5-0 at lightweight, 0-2 at welterweight. So is he really a welterweight? I mean, he's definitely got the size and the mass and that sort of thing. But I kind of like seeing him tested and battle through it. To me, that shows some character. So to me, even though yes, he was in trouble early, I like to see that a fighter sometimes, especially a guy like Sage Northcutt. So this was a big win for him. Obviously, very very powerful to finish a guy with hammer fist. I mean, 2 fights on one card finished with hammer fist.
Weird, huh?
Yeah, stuff you don't see very often. But I really like this performance, and even better, I like the performance afterwards. He came back to the press room and he was eyeballing the snack tray over there for the journalists. There were some brownies and some cookies, and you could see that he was like, gosh, I don't know if I should, And Raymond Daniels like, bro, just eat it, man. So he grabbed a brownie and just real fast, like just woofed it down. And you could tell it like really worried him whether or not he should be eating candy and eating sugar or not. So he ate the brownie. And I wish I had been recording it, man. I wanted to have it because it was just so funny to see his mind working. Like, should I have this? And then after he finished, he literally said, he's like, well, haven't had too many brownies in my life before, but that one was pretty good.
We were going to have him on the show today to talk about it, but he got grounded, so we can't talk to him for a couple of weeks. I thought it was great that he made the comeback. I mean, it showed a little bit that he has a little bit of heart, where some people have questioned that before in the past. But I want him to – I don't know that he's getting better. Like, he's improving, but I don't know if he's getting better. And I just wish he would have that performance where we all go, I think we got something.
Where
right.
it all clicks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if he doesn't get knocked down by Otto and just grade him on the rest? What you guys think there?
I thought he did okay, but that's what you're supposed to do against Otto, right? Like, he's just yet to really steamroll someone just to show us. I don't know. I mean, like, do you feel like you looked at that and said, there's that team alpha male working right there? Like, he just kind of seemed like the same guy as before to me.
I would agree with that, but I mean, I did like that he like I said, like he bowed through adversity when he got off his back. I mean, as soon as he got off his back,
he was nice combos.
Exactly. Yeah. He went back to work right away, and I do like the fact that he's with Team Alpha Man. I do think that over time we're going to see some growth and development. I believe. I mean, he's still so young.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to say, I'm on both sides of both what you guys were saying. It's strange. I was on the wrong side of the pick here. Zack Otto. He did connect early, and I'm with John. I'm a big fan of overcoming adversity. I think that speaks so much more when I'm trying to grade a guy. I grade a guy a lot less for coming in, and it's kind of tricky because we're going to have a contender series, and those guys are kind of getting A's because that's what that series is designed for, and that's what Dana White's looking for. But if I'm honestly just, grading a guy as far as his ceiling and trying to be honest about it. I like seeing a guy go through the adversity. And for me, I saw the same Sage like Goz was saying, but I saw it in a positive way where the reason why some of the hype was on Sage, not so much the promotion. Remember, when he first came in, the promotion didn't have a lot of time in UFC, 192, when he was first kind of making his debut there right in Texas. They didn't have a lot of time to give him this promotion that he's now getting criticized for. It was because when you looked at his regional fight scene, he had this athletic ability, and it was insane. Now, he was going against lesser than competition, so he can kind of get away with that karate style. But like we've heard Rogan and these guys preach on commentary, when we have these specialists, what happens when they come in a little too early? We see them kind of taxed a little bit. They kind of got to go back, build the fundamentals of their game. Sometimes that involves going to another camp, and then we see their skills kind of come back to the forefront. So I agree that we saw the old Sage, but I think we saw it in a good way where, we're seeing this dividends from Team Alpha Male and the fundamentals getting built. We saw in the last fights he was a lot more fundamental. He's a little less flashy. In this fight, he kind of had a nice balance, and like John said, he did it after getting hurt. So mad props to Sage for that fight.
All right, I'm gonna skip Glenn over Bermudez. This is basically, hey, if I wasn't that impressed, then you're not getting that little 2-minute shine there.
Just feel good for Dennis Bermudez. 3 split decision losses in a row.
I know.
Yes.
I know.
You
I
gotta
know.
at least throw that out there.
I saw that, but I want to make sure that we get through the card to the ones that really popped. Nico Price, I would almost say you too, my friend, but that was pretty amazing, man. To sit there from the bottom and just hammer fist and knock someone out. I think by now it's already been discovered there's been, I think, 3 knockouts from the bottom. I've only seen one other one from the bottom that I could remember at that particular moment, but I think now we're up to maybe 3, so, fair point.
It was impressive, man. I knew coming in, I thought Nico Price versus Randy Brown was going to be a fun fight all week long. Both guys were like, they had mad respect for each other. There was no hard feelings, but they were both like, don't blink, man. This is going to be a lot of fun. Both guys have tremendous athletic ability. Nico is crazy, but in a good way, man. He's an absolute nutcase, but he's so fun to be around, just high energy. And he's joking. He's just like, dude, I got 4 kids to feed. Like, I will fight as much as possible. I need a bonus every time. But, this was not an easy fight for him either. He got tested early as well. But the finish that he had, and I asked him afterwards because I think what helped him get the finish was if you look, the positioning of the right foot was basically holding the head in place. So as he's throwing the hammer fist, he had that right foot hooked on the other side, and there was no way for the head to kind of roll with the shots. And I think that probably assisted in him getting the knockout. And I asked him, like, did you do that? And it's kind of hard to understand Nico sometimes. He kind of just talks around stuff. He's like, oh, come on, I knew what was going to happen. I told you don't blink. I'm like, no, but did you specifically put your right foot there with it? But who knows? He's like, dude, he's like, every position I'm in, I'm throwing to knock you out. He's like, I'm not trying to just get you to move positions. I am throwing to hurt you and knock you out, and this is what you're going to see. I love the creativity. Keep an eye on Nico, man. Keep an eye on Nico. He's a fun dude.
I love the creativity. Aljamain Sterling tweeted that he felt like Brown could have, after the first shot, moved his head. He was very, very simplistic in talking about it. But Ghost pointed out, and I went back and looked at the first one. Did it? Yeah. So the rest were just like there was no reasoning in his head of how can I get out of this. By then it was just punishment, out. But and that was that.
That's why people say it's so dangerous. Knees on the ground. What they're most afraid about with that is somebody being up against the cage because if your head has no give. No. Then you're absorbing 100% of that shot.
Which was very rare in Pride. To be fair, after 10 years of Pride, that sequence was very rare.
Yeah.
So that's why.
And they had ropes too, right? So the head could always go under. But if you're absorbing 100% of that shot every time, that's what happened there with the hammer fist. He was out after the first one.
Yeah, I agree. He was out, and I was kind of frustrated too. I'm glad that John asked that because. On Twitter at the time, I tweeted something out, but I didn't see anybody else tweet anything like that. And I was like, but was one of those things where you don't know, was it him or was it in the moment? Because it happened so fast.
Sometimes positions just happen, right?
And you laid it, I went back and listened. You laid out the question beautifully, but like you said, he's so excited, right? Like you just like it's hard to get an answer, I imagine, out of that guy, but an endearing character, no less. But yeah, I can't say either. Even from my experience, I've been rocked being the guy on top and having a guy punch from bottom, but that was a complete different scenario. That was more, you see a guy going down like into an up kick or a punch from the bottom. Usually there's a colliding momentum, but this was more of a brief but static and just brutal momentum that just happened.
No doubt, my man. Let's move on to Chad Mendes versus Myles Jury. Out since his last fight was 2015 in December, so we're looking at 2.5 months or years, sorry. And he comes back and like Jury's I'm not gonna say he's no joke. He's legit. He's a future champ. I'm just saying he's a tough out. And he came back and he just made it look easy. He took his time, and you could tell, okay, he's gonna have to get around this reach. We all knew that. but he stayed poised, and he didn't show us that he was gonna have to battle any ring rust because there was a little bit of a lack of activity. But when he did catch him and he exploded, it was on point. Good for Chad Mendes, seriously.
I can tell you the welcome from the crowd he got, man. Like, it was like he never left, man. He got one of the biggest pops of the night all week long. The stories and the things that we had around Chad Mendes, they clicked really good. So it was nice to see that. I think people are kind of welcoming him back. You know, it sucks. I talked to him this week. You know, obviously he was out for USADA. That's the reason he was out for 2.5 years. And basically it was a cream that he used to treat his skin that had some stuff in it it shouldn't have. I think if he would have fought it, he probably could have gotten it down to like a year or something. But at the time, he was pretty burned out, and he was already planning on taking a year off anyway. So he just said, well, to hell with it, 2 years. And he said in retrospect, I kind of wish I would have done it. But he did say the 2 years away gave him a lot of time, both mentally and physically, to recover. And he looked great, man. As you said, patient. And he said after the fight, I knew that Myles is a counter striker, so I threw that right feint because that was part of the game plan. Was we knew we'd have to feint a little bit to try to get him to come out of his shell and then pick our shots, and that's exactly what he did, man. He feinted with the right, threw the left. Got the finish. At first, watching the stoppage live, I wasn't so sure about it, because Myles, he definitely hurt him. Mm-hmm. And then Myles was covering up. It's kind of intelligent defense, right? But if you watch the replay, and Chad said, he's like, listen, dude, I know he had his arm out, but I was still banging the hell out of him. It was hurting him. And if you do watch, right after the stoppage, Jury shoots a single leg on Jason Herzog. So anytime you shoot a single on the ref, I'm like, okay.
And it was excessive. So even though you are covering up, I think the referee goes to his sequence of the warnings.
Yep.
And then eventually the stoppage comes. Yeah. So
I like that he did it with his hands. We all know he's a great wrestler. We all know he could do there. But he reminded people that he's got hands. And that's important, especially in the type of division he's in right now.
Should he get Brock Lesnar, though? Zingano. She defeated Marion Renault. Marion had won 3 of 4, 2 in a row. This would have been 3. She could have possibly been looking at a title shot, although Ketlin Vera would have a say in that as well. But in comes Kat Zingano. And Kat, even though she had lost 3 in a row, she's Kat Zingano, man. For some reason, she doesn't go away. She's popular. She has the personality of a fighter, and a lot of people just have become fans of her. So she comes in, she wins, and because she holds that win over Amanda Nunes, the champ. If she's one of those champions that wants to right the wrong, maybe at some point she may get that fight. Right now, no, but still a good win for Kat Zingano. Very dominant, man. Mm-hmm. She was like ragdolling her at times, and I didn't think she could do that to Marion. I thought she could possibly beat her, but she looked very superior to her at certain times. Just wasn't Renault's night.
Yeah, I think all her issues mostly have been mental, really, when she gets in there, because when she really puts her mind to what she wants to do, she does dominate opponents. And I thought it was good. You're right. She's probably not going to get that fight, but it's good that she plants that seed over and over and over, because if you're the champion, you saw the way Amanda reacted when Valentina was coming at her. She beat Valentina, and it still bugged her. Yep. Imagine what Kat Zingano does to her.
Well, all she has to do is get on the same card as Vieira versus Nunes. If Nunes versus Cyborg doesn't happen. Now you're on the card, and if something falls off, guess who's ready to pounce on that opportunity? You know what I mean? So good for her. That's the main card right there. 5,648 in attendance, 591,000 total gate. Bonuses went to Barcelos versus Holoball. Performance of the nights went to Price and Mendes Junk. Can you remind me one thing, though? Is she no longer with Alliance?
She's still doing some stuff with them, but she's outsourcing a lot of her stuff. So she's traveling around a little bit.
So who was in her corner other than Justin Torres, Ronda Rousey's former?
Barb Honchek was there. I didn't see who was actually in her corner at the time, but I can tell you around her was Barb Honchek, and I didn't see
no Del Fiero, though.
But Del Fiero was not there.
Interesting. No. She's really immersed herself in that camp, and she seems to be homies with Angela Hill and Beck Rawlings and Jessica Penne. So
yeah, when I was researching this fight, I was kind of strange too. I was just trying to track down where she was training, but yeah, it looks like she kind of just, like a lot of fighters doing more of the boxing, regimen. They're building around them.
Yep. And she said she wants to do more of like working with specialists to do like the skill for that skill, and really refine those skills.
Let's talk to Marco in Waco, Texas, see what he thought. And if you want to follow Marco, it's 866-522-2846. This first hour is wide open. Now's the time to call in. Marco from Waco, what's up, buddy?
Marco from Waco, ¿qué pasa, Otto and John Morgan?
Yes, sir.
Hey, so entertaining fights this weekend, dude. Let's not hate on freaking Super Sage Northcutt, man, because he showed me a lot of guts and character on that fight. Like being in trouble in the first round, and then coming back with that like John Morgan said on the MMA Roadshow, the night of the freaking hammer punch, man, the hammer fist.
Yes, it was.
Zack Otto. Chad Mendes, man. John Morgan mentioned it on the weekend with Mr. Jessica Jones. Why you put him on the rankings, man? Because he's been on run for the last 2 years, but he's always a contender, a guy that fought for the title 3 times. George, this is the question for you. Where is Chad Mendes on the USA MMA Junkie rankings as of right now?
That's a good question, man. Because I got the email, but I haven't had a chance to go through it yet. I've got the proposal. Do we just roll it out now?
Yeah. So he went out basically as a site. We decided that 2 years, regardless of what kind of legal troubles you were in or what kind of possible PED suspension you could be looking at, 2 years is enough. And I think we didn't call it the Dominic Cruz, but literally when we were kind of in the middle of this, I think it was even giving the ultimate pass to a guy like Dominic Cruz, because our feeling was, hey, he's alive and he hasn't retired. It's just certain reasons he hasn't gone in there. But at some point, the division moves on. They go from undisputed to interim, or just it's a vacant title. And we thought 2 years was fair. So Chad last fought in December of 2015. I noted that earlier. He got tested, though, in the spring of 2016. That's why the 2 years only recently ended, like in April or something like that. Mendes left at number 4. I went back and researched that. And I thought, well, should he come back to number 4? How has the division changed since then? There's no longer Aldo at the top. Hell, since then, McGregor has come through and he's left. And now Holloway's at the top. And I looked and see, and one thing that impressed me was the top wins that he did have when he was active, not only against the top fighters, but the resume he built. And he came up short against the guys that should still either be at the top or, McGregor's obviously moved on. So I suggested 5, I think. 5, right? Somewhere like that?
Yeah, number 5. And I think that's great. So that would leave us with Max Holloway, number 1, Brian Ortega, number 2, Jose Aldo, 3, Frankie Edgar, number 4.
Right.
And then
he's lost to all of them except Holloway and Ortega, who have just basically earned their spots.
That's right.
McGregor left, and that would reflect. I mean, I know it was a long time ago, but still, Swanson hasn't had enough of those tears. Like I think he's lost 2 of his last 3 or something like that, or maybe his last 2, to fight off a Mendes who's returning after 2.5 years. So I'm not using that as the tiebreaker, but it's just Mendes, when he left, he just basically lost to the elite, and other than that, he had
they'll be official tomorrow, but I think that's a good spot for it, man. I really do. I think that's a fair spot. So there you go.
Yeah.
Preview for all the MMA Junkie Radio listeners. You got the scoop. He'll be number 5
for sure. All right, let's take a break, and then when we come back, we'll continue plowing through this card here. Alejandro Perez, Alexander Volkanovski, Said Nurmagomedov, Orioni Barcelos, Luis Carmouche, Mark De La Rosa, Jessica Aguilar all got wins. And in the UFC, man, these all count. You just move in a certain direction, and the ones that hurt, especially those splits like Scoggins, Bermudez, oof, those are tough ones to swallow. Plus, Bellator had 2 fight cards. Both of their champions retained their belts, Julia Budd and Patricio Freire. We'll talk about all that when we come back. It's MMA Junkie Radio on Sirius XM, Rush 93.
King Kong has a lot of sit on them. Like a lot, especially Goes. Here are Gorgeous George and Goes.
2018 NBA Summer League is lighting up Las Vegas, and NBA Radio is bringing you exclusive access to all the action. If you missed any of their interviews with Mavericks owner Mark Cuban, Warriors head coach Steve Kerr, Dr. J, Julius Erving, and many more, you can hear them streaming on your phone or at home on SiriusXM connected devices and speakers. Just search NBA Radio. LeBron James making his debut in Lakers gear yesterday at the NBA Summer League. Good to see him out there supporting the young guns. I caught the Lakers on Thursday. Josh Hart, of course, looking good for us. But the rest, I mean, those guys are going to be fighting for like a spot or two. I think the roster's been determined. Shout out. Oh, and they're 4-0 and going into the semifinals of the NBA Summer League. Shout out to France, the whole country, but especially the men's national soccer team who defeated Croatia yesterday 4-2 in a very entertaining World Cup. Kind of started off a little bit, their first 2 goals were from a set piece, a penalty. Excuse me, and then the other one was an own goal. Croatia did fight back to make it 1-1, and at 1.42 with about 10-15 minutes left. But by then, I think France, once they got that 4th goal, that was it. So I mean, on paper they had an outstanding team and they delivered. So good for them. I think that's their second one overall. They won it back in 1998, if you'll recall. Even you non-soccer fans have seen this GIF. Zinedine Zidane headbutting an Italian defender right in the chest. Yeah, and knocking him down. Of course, there may have been a flop in that as well, but anyway, that whole tournament's over, and I'm bummed out. I really enjoyed the World Cup. How about you guys?
Yeah, it just felt different. It was fun, but it felt different without some of those teams there.
Italy, Holland, U.S.
That's it.
I agree. All right, look, guys. Alejandro Perez, he defeated Eddie Wineland 7-1-1, but he's not popping like Alexander Volkanovski, who's now 18-1, but 5-0 in the UFC. So he's got 2 less losses, but he's got 2 less wins in the UFC, but no losses. But yet, he's cozying up to maybe Mendes and maybe a big fight. He took out Darren Elkins, who had won 5 or 6 in a row. So huge win for him. But both guys, I think, deserve getting mentioned. Who wants to talk about anyone?
Yeah, I mean, Alejandro Perez, listen, I think a lot of people thought maybe Eddie Wineland won this fight. He's a guy that's, flown under the radar. 7-1-1 in the UFC now, but he's fought on a lot of Latin American cards, so people didn't really see him. He is learning English. I'll give him that, man. He was trying. He was practicing. He did some of his scrum. He tried to do as much of it in English as he could. He had to get some translations so he could get some, deeper thoughts on the table or whatever. So I can appreciate that. But he's trying, man. He's up there in San Jose now. Yeah, he's up there in San Jose now. And trying to get better. He's trying to move his family from Mexico up to San Jose. So, I mean, the kid's fighting for a good card. But, yeah, Volkanovski, man, he's got some momentum on his side. He's not afraid to ask for top-level competition. Came into that fight with an injured rib. He's injured it on Wednesday night, but fought anyway. Wow. And Darren Elkins, man, gotta love Darren Elkins. I mean, it sucks that he loses because you hate to see, man, that run that he was on, snapped. But that dude, I mean, if he's on a card, in
that way too.
Oh, I know. You gotta watch when he fights.
Yeah. His face is crimson with blood almost every fight. I hate to see him like that he has to win on toughness. But, the one thing I always think about when I think about Team Alpha Male is those guys and their ability to not let up on the chokes. The rear naked choke, the guillotine, the variety of front chokes, the darces. And Darren, when he couldn't get any of his striking going, but yet they were up against the fence, I kept thinking, is he going to maybe go to a guillotine or try any form of a riot? He had him in front of him a lot, and he had his arm around his head a lot, but yet he was never trying to lock anything in, and that was a little strange for me. I just thought he would try and initiate at least that kind of offense since the other stuff wasn't working. I find it hard to believe that he's just always going to try and out-scramble you and only take your back. I mean, Darren's a high school state wrestling champion. He's got some skills, but it just things weren't working. Of course, we don't know what's behind the scenes. Maybe there's something that prevented him from exploding, or I don't know.
In his defense, though, Volkanovski's just a beast.
Oh,
yeah. People weren't paying attention to him. he really deserves it. And it was a tough spot to see, not just because of the bloodiness that we usually associate with Elkins, but we often talk about matchmaking. We complain about certain guys getting certain matchups. Well, then when you have guys like Darren Elkins who go through the fire repeatedly, who win the fights they're not supposed to win and keep signing up for more, and yet they get a guy like Volkanovski, who is another guy that nobody wants to fight because everybody knows he's tough, he's not ranked. Well, let's throw Elkins at. So you got to imagine, not to think evilly, not that the promotions, twiddling their mustache. Obviously, they appreciate a guy like Darren Elkins, but I also got to imagine they're pretty happy with the outcome that happened too. And what John said, that he did it with a busted rib, was insane. And just one more side note, which I just find stuff like this hilarious. I was listening to John's podcast, MMA Roadshow, and he was sharing that whenever you get an outsider that aren't familiar with MMA or its characters, kind of produce funny moments. And John was saying something about a guy going, "Oh my God, that Darren Elkins guy! He's out there having a beer after his fight like nothing happened."
It was great. Local media was like, "I can't believe it. He was in this war, and now he's just walking around having a beer." We were like, "That's MMA, man.
That's Elkins."
Elkins beat Michael Johnson, Dennis Bermudez, Mirsad Bektik, Godofredo Pepe, Chaz Skelly, Robert Whittiford. I mean, there's some fucking good names in there. You know what I mean? So he can come back from this, but I hate to see him just always taking so much damage. I want the tattoo to mean I'm damaging you, not I'm taking the damage. I'm not trying to take a shot at him, but I really like Darren Elkins, and those runs are hard to come by.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. All right, progressing through the card here. Said Nurmagomedov against Justin Scoggins. Personally, I thought Scoggins won, but I knew that it was close and it could go either way. But it was Scoggins' reaction, and I'm sorry, you karate-based guys, with that kind of movement, where if you're always countering and you're moving,
for sure.
You know what I mean? It's like
I didn't even pick Scoggins.
Stephen Thompson came out the other day and said, "It looks like I'm gonna have to adjust my style, but what have you guys been waiting for?" You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah.
There has to be a little bit more initiating as well, unless you want to put yourself in this position where three different people determine what you're doing. That, along with Bermudez saying, "I guess I'm going to have to start finishing more," that, along with Stipe Miocic. I saw Ben Folks' article where he was just perplexed at the way Cormier and Lesnar and some other stuff was handled. And I agree with him. I thought usually the former champs do get to have a word, but now it's going to come back to bite him, the fact that he's always been so dry. Because if you don't entertain in this sport, that can happen. And I wish these fighters would learn from their predecessors.
Interesting note, though, on Scoggins. Every single media outlet tracked by MMAdecisions.com had it for Scoggins, including some 30-27.
Yep.
Yeah. There were a lot of close cards, and really, and the 30-27 on the Bermudez card, that one baffled me.
Yeah.
But Eddie Wineland, you can make a case for him in that fight too.
Absolutely.
So there were a lot of close fights that night.
We see that, John. Though, I mean, again, I'm sure Boise is an underrated spot. I've heard that from a lot of people. But
Why did you do that to us?
when you go to these smaller regional shows, I mean, you're there, John. We see this more often, right? The sketchy scorecards and whatnot.
Because you're getting, usually the UFC will bring in, or the local commissions. When it's the UFC, they'll usually bring in like the best names. But they actually have a commission there, and they brought in a couple names. It was cool. Like Herb Dean was reffing the first fight of the night. I was like, good for that. But some of the names on the scorecards weren't names that you see a lot, so you don't know, how many reps they get and how much, basically how much practice they get scoring.
I thought Scoggins won, but I was not upset that they said Nurmagomedov, because I understood how they could interpret the criteria for him, too.
I just hope they keep Scoggins around, man.
Yeah,
I think he's like 3 losses in a row now, but dude, he's so fun to watch.
And he just fought at 25 again, which I think is where he should be. But
I agree.
I don't want, now we're in this weight cutting era where I want their safety first.
True, yeah, true, very true.
You're chomping at the bit. You want to say something?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, Scoggins especially, because he's a guy that I feel silly saying it now, but it's true. And usually I'll try to bump my chest on a dark horse pick, but I've been completely wrong. But I still stand by these guys at flyweight. Where one of them was Smolka. I thought when Smolka was on his run, I feel like he offered some really unique tools for Demetrius Johnson. And another guy was Scoggins. And again, it sounds funny now when you look at the runs these guys are in, but if you look at them at their best and what they offer as fighters, on their best night, man. I think they can contend with anybody, beat anybody in that top 5. So
you're just looking for new tests for Demetrius, right?
Exactly that too.
He's passed everything so
far.
He hasn't fought Bruce
this guy.
Lee,
I remember Smoka's first win. He had some amazing head movement and some great presence in the pocket. And I thought, wow, if the rest of his game's legit, we might have a player here. But there's just so much to MMA. Liz Carmouche, back in the win column, defeated Jennifer Maia, who has had a good run through Invicta, but she came up short in this fight.
She was sick too for that fight, right?
Yeah. So, Carmouche, I thought, looked very fit, and you know, she just looks so athletically
125
beyond,
yeah,
beyond Jennifer Meyer. I think she's going to be able to shake off that split decision loss to Alexis Davis in her last fight, and maybe become a name that you can, you know, pivot around. Of course, there's still Sarge, Modafferi, and Valentina ahead of her, but still on a good pace, or you know, I think she's on a good trajectory. Mark De La Rosa defeated Elias Garcia and Jessica Aguilar, a win over Jody Escobar. Keeping her name in that top 10, but she needs to really build on that, and I think she's now in her mid-30s, so she needs to stay busy and healthy.
It skipped over, by the way, Raoni Barcelos, who had a beautiful knockout win over Kurt Holobaugh, and really cool in the back as well, man. Really emotional in the back, and Pedro Hizo was in his corner, and you know, he thanked Pedro Hizo, but kind of cool. He thanked Pedro Hizo, but then he brought in his dad. His dad was in his corner and said, you know, yes, Pedro has helped me a lot, but it all started with my dad, who's been a black belt for like 40 years and first started. And then in talking with Pedro Hizo afterwards, he said Hizo said that it was actually Glover Teixeira that first saw Raoni Barcelos in the gym and was like, that kid's got something. But at that time, he was pure jiu-jitsu because his dad was a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt. As Pedro said, didn't even know how to throw a jab, and they started teaching him. So, I mean, kind of cool lineage and cool backstory, and it was an incredibly emotional moment for Barcelos. And a little factoid I learned this week, Said Nurmagomedov, not related to Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, he's just a friend, right?
Jeez.
Cousin as in, like, boys. That's my cousin.
That'd be bad for George.
Oh, he's a cousin?
No,
he's a friend.
They would say
it's
it,
been,
right?
yeah, it's been said, like, because he's been billed as Khabib's cousin, and there have been, you know, stories and stuff where it's like, this is my cousin, but they mean it like my boy, so they're not related.
All right, Bellator. They had back-to-back events. Pitbull Frady defended versus Daniel Weichel. Split decision there, so now he's 2-0 on Weichel. This one was the one in Italy. Alessio Sakura also got a win. Andrei Koreshkov, welterweight. He got a spinning back kick
To the
win.
body.
And a big shout out to Giorgio Petrosian and Gaston Bolanos on the kickboxing portion. They did some work as well. At Bellator 202 the night before, Julia Budd defeated Talita Nogueira via TKO punches. Nogueira, the outstanding Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner, takes her first loss. Now she's 7-1 in MMA. Michael McDonald, man, he blasted Eduardo Dantas, and now Eduardo Dantas is going to have a little bit more of a comeback because of the injury that he suffered. Chris Honeycutt and Valentin Moldavsky.
But McDonald
did he really?
Again and now he said, I don't know about the future of my career. He's like, I don't know how long I can keep doing this, where every time I fight 58 freaking seconds and break my hand again.
Wow. It's frustrating,
That guy, man, I saw him as a teenager out at Tachi Palace, and I'm like, this kid is legit, man. I was so excited about his career, and I've enjoyed following his career, but it sucks, man. He's one of those guys that just had something, you know, like you think, like a Cain Velasquez, you know, what if he had been able to stay healthy over the years, what would he have accomplished? Michael McDonald, one of those guys that, man, I thought just had it, but injuries, man, just slowed him down.
Did you guys catch Dantas' injury live?
No.
I didn't see it at all until when they brought up the replay. I was like, whoa.
The replays, which, yeah,
I didn't see it at all.
Yeah.
You saw it on the replay.
So
as I'm getting older, I can't look at that stuff anymore. When I was a kid, no problem, dude. I'd watch Theismann over and over. Now I can't. I can't even hear about it.
Well, back-to-back events for Bellator. Good on them, but we really need to get them on DAZN, right? DAZN, so that we can get them live for the West Coast, live for everybody. And just get them on a consistent platform.
Press conference tomorrow, by the way, in New York for DAZN. We should hear more about the welterweight Grand Prix. We should get the pricing. We should get all that information. So we won't be there, but Amanda. Damn it, I forgot. Our freelancer.
Yeah,
she'll be out there for us.
Oh, you mean Amanda?
Yeah, Amanda.
Shout out to
Salvado.
Gerald Harris. He came up short, but you know what? Good on someone who, you know, he felt like his career wasn't done and he still had an itch to scratch, and so he's been trying, but he did come up short. The Junkie Karma record has taken some hits in these last few weeks.
I think the opponents have been calling in now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the opponents are giving the phone. Yeah, they're like, hey, call the show. They haven't been doing as good as they used to do. All right, so let's take a break, and then we come back. I want to discuss the Daily Bake because I want to tie it into some discussion that we had earlier. But John had said the jab. You were just talking about it. You said the jab was just like two minutes ago.
Yep.
Junior Dos Santos, he's got is this boxing like? It didn't look as clean in this fight, right? There was some lazy jabs that he was throwing
He didn't
out
go to
there.
the body as much as he used to.
I don't know. Yeah, I was tripping out on that. I thought for sure he would. That was one advantage that he would have, and it just kind of went away. But he's also going to be a part of our daily debate. He's he's the subject of it. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
To link into the MMA Junkie Radio Network, hit us up on Twitter.com at MMA Junkie Radio. This is MMA Junkie Radio. Here are your hosts, Gorgeous George and Goes.
The Killers are playing a private show for SiriusXM subscribers at the Stephen Talkhouse in the Hamptons, and we have your chance to be there. One grand prize winner will receive a trip for two and tickets to this very special show. For official rules and to enter, go to SiriusXM.com/thekillers before July 18th. No additional purchase necessary. John, you're feeling it over there, huh?
Tune, boy. That's a
Crank
tune.
it up, Danny. Let's see if we get John to groove.
Yeah, boy.
All right. Let's see here. The daily debate. Hey, did you ever catch him?
Yeah, one time in Dallas.
Big
man.
regret.
A great show,
Big
man.
regret. Never caught him.
Great show.
Kept thinking, oh, he'll be around. You know him, Tom Petty. Yeah, they're not going anywhere. They all live till their 90s, right? And next thing you know, what? George Michael, Prince, Tom Petty, David Bowie. There's been a lot of singers that just checked out early.
Yeah, man.
All right, it's time for the daily debate, and I had it here, and now I lost it.
It's a tough one.
Why did I do that?
It's a tough one.
Hold on, I got it.
Kind of anxious to see what the answers are in this one.
I got
It was
it.
very,
Here
very
it is. Here it
close.
is.
Was?
All right,
Okay.
here we go, guys. Following his UFC Boise win, who should Junior Dos Santos' next opponent be? Your four choices are Curtis Blades. Wow, this was close. Derek Lewis, Stipe Miocic, and Alexander Volkov. Thank you to the 1,569 that voted. I'll reveal those after we go across the panel. Start off, John.
All right, so here was my line of thinking here, right? That performance I didn't think was good enough to get him the Stipe trilogy right now. I think Stipe's too close. just had a kid, probably wants to take some time off, is willing to sit around and wait and see what happens, right?
Oh, he did have the kid,
Right.
Stipe.
Well, I think about to happen, I should say. Yeah. Volkov, that would be an awesome main event for Russia, right? But that's right around the corner, and JDS said, I want to take a little time off, too. This has been a trying year. I want to spend some time with my family. Blades would be a good fight, but I think Curtis Blades kind of feels disrespected that Brock Lesnar stepped in, and I don't think Curtis Blades really wants to fight again unless he feels like it's a definite number one contender. I think he kind of wants to sit around and maybe wait as well because he feels like he deserves a title shot. So that leaves the Black Beast, Derek Lewis, and I think that would be a fun fight. Both guys kind of had lackluster fights the last time out, right? They're both coming off wins. You could put them together, and they both going to have a little pressure on them knowing that they got to do better than they did the last time out, and I think they'll both come out striking. That's the matchup I'm going with.
Goes.
I like his matchup. The problem is Derek Lewis is back. If it gets fixed, then I'm in. But if it doesn't, and we have the potential for another one of these types of fights where his back locks up and he can't do nothing, I don't want to watch that. I would go with Curtis Blades.
All right.
So, back fixed, Lewis, no, Blades.
Dan Tom?
Man, I'm right in between both these guys. I think John makes great points. I got to side with Derek Lewis for those points, but I got to say this, though. I see the UFC doing the Blades matchup. This seems like a real kind of classic move for them to do as far as where it puts them. It gives JDS another look at a kind of a similar matchup, but the new younger lion, which is a kind of a good vetting process for Blades, even though, let's be honest, I think he deserved his spot already. So I don't like that matchup for different reasons for each guy, but I think the UFC will go that way. But my vote's going to be cast for Derek Lewis.
I think Blades has to take a matchup because if Brock Lesnar were to come back when his suspension ends, so we'll just call it January 10th, maybe. We know it actually, right?
It's like the 13th.
Yeah.
Right around
so let's
there.
just say he fights right around that time. Well, the winner of Lesnar and Cormier, even if he breaks the record and wins it in 5 seconds for fastest fight ever, and everything's healthy, he still can't defend till what, like March? I mean, unless he does one of those Chris Lieben or Ronda Rousey turnarounds. And is Blades really going to sit out from May, which is when the Chicago event took place, June, all the way till next March with the best case scenario? Eesh. So he has to take something. Now, that said, he's got the type of offense that just will throttle a guy like JDS. I mean, JDS is going to think, oh, shit, Kane again. You know what I mean? do I want to sit there and be battling a guy that's going to want to test my wrestling? That's why I do love the Derek Lewis matchup. Goes, good call. I guess he's supposed to fly to Germany and get checked out. And if he gets checked out and he comes back healthy, that is a fight to make. But you know what? I'm just going to cast my vote to Volkov. And it's not to just be different from the panel. But even though he has those feelings of, hey, I need some time off or whatever, I don't think he suffered anything serious. And I think Russia would be nice to get 2 fights to make up for that year in which he lost. Like, now that check's going to come in. I'm sure he already got one of them. Here's your show money. And the other one, provided he passed all his tests, here comes the win bonus. And I'm sure when he looks at that and goes, ooh, one more, I can do another one of these, and then maybe take some time off. For some reason, I think he'll see that Volkov's not a bad play here.
And they need something out there, right?
They need something, so the UFC will go, hey, we need you. Again, over 1,500 votes came in, and it was really close, guys. They agreed with you guys, basically. Lewis, 29%. Second place was tied, Blades and Miocic.
Oh, wow.
But Volkov wasn't far behind, 19%.
Wow, so it was all split up pretty well.
That was a good one, yeah. And you know what's another name out there, by the way? So, by the way, that's our daily debate for today. But I do want to say, as far as the heavyweights are concerned, let's not forget about our guy, Justin Willis. So, Willis, Miocic, who wants to come back, Volkov, Lewis, Blades Jr., all kind of have some positive momentum going on in their careers where we could have a nice little, I don't want to call it a little mini tournament, but we could just have some nice fun matchups until either DC retires or Lesnar pulls the upset or that somehow gets figured out.
I think you're going to be able to keep the division moving even though we're kind of waiting for that fight.
Yeah. And the winner of Struve and Tabera will now be back in the mix, and I think Hunt has also got a big fight coming up in Russia as well. Hunt's just always a name because he's exciting. Tuivasa's undefeated. Ledette's undefeated. So, I don't know. I felt like 2-3 months ago we were like, oh, what are we going to do with the heavyweights? You know, after this last year where we got hit with a Rothwell suspension, Barnett suspension, Mir and Nelson left for Bellator, and Junior I think was still on a suspension at the time. Cormier hadn't really made himself a heavyweight just yet. Is Kane ever going to come back? We were like, what happened? And all of a sudden, 6-month turnaround. Nice. Yeah, I like it. All right, in the second hour, we got some guests coming your way. One of them is going to be headlining UFC Fight Night 134. His name's Anthony Smith. He'll join us in about 15 minutes. We're still going to try and catch up with one more fighter from that card, but we haven't locked them in just yet. So this is your opportunity to call in. It's 866-522-2846. Tell us what you thought of the 2 Bellator cards and UFC Fight Night 133, also known as UFC Boise. We'll be right back. Here we go. It's the second hour of the MMA Junkie Radio show. John, can you share that story?
I mean, sure, why not?
Enough time's passed. What, 10 years maybe? Or?
It's 2011.
So
probably.
John was in Brazil covering an event for MMA Junkie. I think it was a UFC event, right?
Yeah, the first UFC done there.
And because he was out there,
the interesting backstory: Chevello's passport got stolen out of his car. His
right,
car
which he's shared that story here on our show.
Yeah, and so he couldn't do it. And Andrew Simon reached out and was like, "Would you like to do commentary for this Chuto Brazil event on the Bope Special Forces bases?" And I'm like, "Would I? Yeah, I'm down." Oh, by the way, your commentary partner is going to be Hoist Gracie. I'm like, I'm commentating with Royce Gracie on an event in Brazil at the Special Forces Training
What
Center.
year was this?
2011.
So I think, to be fair, now we got almost a dozen years under our belts, so fanboying just doesn't happen much.
Right.
But 2011, if I get to commentate with Royce Gracie, I'd be pretty geeked out. You know what I mean?
Listen, dude.
It'd still be like that today.
Yeah, even today. I mean, listen, you can't fanboy and like, hey, I'm gonna take a. I mean, but
No, not that. But what I mean is like, hell yeah, I'm in.
To sit. Well, I mean, ahead of time, no, but at the moment when you're there, and at one point Uriah Faber sat down for 2 fights, so it's me, Uriah Faber, and Royce Gracie calling fights in Brazil.
Because that was one of your first commentating gigs, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean,
I'd done Tachi at the time.
I'd done a bunch, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it was one of the things that kind of. I mean, you do kind of sit back and go, wow, like this is crazy. But yeah, so first fight of the night, yeah, it's a little nervous. Me and Royce Gracie, I mean,
right?
MMA legend.
That's what I'm getting at.
And yeah, and this was one of the biggest platforms. I had done like some online streams and stuff, but this is for HDNet. You know what I mean? I think it was. I don't even think it was Access TV at that time. It was still HDNet. I'm filling in for Chavello. Like yeah, of course, I'm a little bit nervous about it. And so me and Royce Gracie, first fight. And that was actually another funny. So that was the first time I learned.
Was it prior?
Moreras.
Was it prior to UFC or after UFC?
Prior. It was Thursday night prior to the weigh-ins.
Okay.
So it was actually kind of funny because 2 stories. One was it was the first time I'd ever heard Uva Moreira. They were shouting, and I was like,
"You're going to die in Portuguese."
Yeah, I had no idea. It was the first time we'd been down there, and I was just like, Royce, look at the passion, the energy from these troops, from these fans. This is incredible. And he's like, they're saying you're going to die. And I'm like, I mean, these are Special Forces guards on the Special Forces training ground. I'm like, okay, we're in the red corner, I didn't know how to handle it. But it was really, so I was kind of nervous, and prelim fights, it was like a 10-fight card or whatever. First prelim, I mean, literally like 15 seconds into the fight, I'm like, they go to the ground. There's like a takedown attempt. They scramble. The guy on the bottom hits a Kimura attempt, rolls, turns over. So, I mean, like 15 seconds in the fight, we're already in a Kimura. And I've got, the jiu-jitsu legend, Royce Gracie, and I'm like, Royce, wow, look, it looks like there's some real pressure on the joint there. He needs to maybe step over to relieve, just trying to set him up to where he goes, yes.
yes.
It just lays out, and I'm like, all right. And
I haven't heard it, but I can appreciate it so much more because for listeners, it came up between commercials right now because I was talking about just going back for fun to watch some of Shogun's earlier stuff, and I watched the first Pride Bushido, and they had Royce guest commentating there, and you had like Morrow and Boss and real pros, right? And I remember hearing the story from John, but I've never actually heard the footage, right? But I can imagine because they were doing the exact same thing, like saying, "Oh yeah, he's on the ground now, and this guy's really good. He's got this accolades. I mean, right? Royce looks like he's working for this, right? Royce was like, yeah, that guy might want to stand up right now." He was just like it was just like, what? Like he didn't even, that was it. Like he talked around the jiu-jitsu, but didn't talk about it. I love Royce, but it was just kind of, it brought up that story. That was great.
The day he came in to do the show after that, I asked him, I go, how was it? And he stared at me for like 30 seconds before he even talked. He stared at me, and I was like, oh shit, it must have been bad.
So you sorted it out. I think Faber took a more of a role, right?
Yeah, Faber definitely did. Faber was cornering somebody earlier in the night, and then after that, like he came and sat down for 2 or 3 fights as well. And I got into, once I realized, because the bottom line is, I guess in the beginning, this is Royce Gracie. I'm John Morgan. I'm like, I'm gonna defer to him. Like all I'm gonna try to do is set him up because this is
you were
the
just
legend.
lobbing alley-oops?
Exactly. Like I'm just gonna lie. And then finally I realized, well, I guess I'm gonna have to shoot some threes out here. You know what I mean? Like,
gotta take this to the hole.
Yeah, man.
My guy's not jumping. My guy's not dunking.
Props for him doing it on the fly because he just listening on Fight Pass at home to the commentary. I thought it was like Hal from Chicago. It was like to hijack my Fight Pass for a second. I was shaking it. It's like, what's going on here?
John, was it Daryl Ewald that was directing back then? And
it absolutely was.
Did anybody tell Royce anything? Like, we need a little bit more out of you, buddy?
I don't know, because I think Daryl and the crew were... Well, first of all, we were working like outside. So we didn't have like full studio setup, but I think they were also trying to make sure not overload me or so they were keeping everything nice and simple, and it was more positive encouragement between fights and things like that. I mean, they had this scab crew to put together for the event, so I think they were trying not to be
overwhelming. Their starting QB got hurt during the warm-ups, and they didn't want to overwhelm you.
Yeah, they put in the backup. They're like, hey, run left, run right, run up the middle. That's all we got tonight.
They played like a little QB in junior high, so they're like, hey, remember he used to throw?
He threw a ball once.
I remember you telling us the story, and I remember hearing some of it, but I'd love to hear the whole thing.
Montana, and he was like, yeah, that's how you throw spiral.
Good times, man.
All right. Anthony Smith has confirmed he'll be joining us in about 10 minutes or so. Guys, Khabib and Conor McGregor were both at the World Cup yesterday.
Yep.
I don't want to ask you what you thought of it all and all that. I'm sure that fight is going to get signed. It sounds like it's going to get signed soon. But I wanted you to know. I want to ask you guys, who won yesterday between Khabib and Conor? Conor released this video. He's in Russia and he's being escorted by security or people or his people, and then he takes a picture with Vladimir Putin, and he looks sharp in his suit. You know, Khabib, the Russian who has met Putin in the past, is just at the stadium. Conor's clearly in a suite, but you know, fans like to look at that and they like to size up the big figures in our sport and just feel like, almost like, hey, who had the nicest dress at the Oscars, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. Who won yesterday between Conor and
But hold on. When you look at that Khabib picture for the second time, you realize there's glass behind him. You see a little bit of reflection. So he's in a suite,
He could be in a suite, too, yeah.
He's in a suite. Conor's outside. Now, Conor had a plate of pasta. I've never been served a plate of pasta at a soccer game, so that's pretty solid. But, man.
Oh, and one more thing. Bear in mind that T-shirt could be a cool gift from the Russian national soccer team to the beloved Khabib.
It looked like it was signed.
It was a lot of them. It was a lot of them. So it could be a gift from the whole team to you. We respect you, blah, blah, blah. Or it could just be, give them one of these, and they give someone else one. Yeah, I don't know. But what do you guys think?
I think Conor, and I'll tell you why. Two reasons. Number one, he had a pretty cool little promo video to go with it, so that's pretty dope. And he got
in his home country too.
But that's the thing is he's in Russia because there was a whole lot of talk, right, of like, bro, you wouldn't even be able to get into Russia. You know, I'm talking like, what are you talking about? You want to fight in Russia? You couldn't even set foot in Russia. People would have you immediately. Da 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 da. Like, oh, really? Because that's funny. Not only am I here, but I'm chilling with your boy Vlad. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think Conor did, man. And I'm not disrespecting because look, in the fight itself, my early lean, and it's going to happen, is Khabib. I mean, I think it's a horrible match. But as far as putting that flash on and putting it on display yesterday, I think Conor won.
I think amongst all of us, amongst everyone in the world but those two, Conor won. Between those two, Khabib won. Because the whole point of that message was to stir something up in Khabib. And he didn't do that. And any time that's ever happened in the past, it's never been a good thing for Conor. Conor needs someone to play off of. Whenever somebody doesn't play that game, I think it kind of worries them.
And I'll tell you this.
Well, Khabib does get to cash in.
I was going to say, and I'll tell you this. Anytime like Conor does anything, Khabib or Ali, whoever's managing his Twitter account at the moment, should just have that video clip teed up, ready to go, and just reply every time with that clip of him getting off the bus. Just tell me where. What time? Mm-hmm, no security. No, you know what I mean? Because that was the ultimate right there. At that point, you're like, oh, this dude is never going to bother Khabib, like, ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think perception is reality. So if that's the case, then Conor won. You know, we can talk about the fight. I agree. The lean has got to be toward Khabib. I agree with John. But even thinking about the fight, I still think it's a win because think about it this way. Everybody's kind of counting out, maybe not everybody, but stylistically, the odds are going to be stacked against Conor. I think, the way the styles matchup goes. But you look at it, regardless of the styles matchup, even like a different styles matchup against Aldo, what's the common thread with McGregor? It's doing stuff before the fight. It's planting seeds before the fight. Now, a stoic guy like Khabib, he's going to have a tough task trying to shake. But what's the best possible thing you could do for a guy who's just so beloved in a country that kind of stays behind this great wall? Go into his country before even any fights or any talks are started. Go to his leader and do the whole, I'm hanging out with your ex-girlfriend. Now we're going to do the selfie talk because, hey, the best revenge is living a good life, and that's all true and zen and all, but let's be honest. If somebody shows up, if that one guy that you dislike shows up with your ex-girlfriend at a party, we've all been there as dudes. That's the worst move, and that was Conor. Whether he did it successfully, only Khabib knows, but Conor just did that move.
He did, man. And, he's coming off a non-gangster move in Brooklyn because that's going to get him in some trouble. It's going to cost him some money. Yep. But he pulled off a gangster move this past weekend, man. The whole little video looks pretty slick. Him sitting in the suite looks pretty slick. The pick with Vlad. I think what could have saved Khabib, and the reason I bring this up is because Ali, good friend of the show, active manager. He reminds me a little bit of just how the managers are in pro wrestling, where they're a big part of it. I'm not comparing them to Captain Lou or nothing like that. I'm just saying he's a part of it. He helps navigate his guys, and I dig that, man. I respect that in Ali. But in this one, I thought, like what you said, John, that's a great one. Or there has to be a previous pick of him and Putin maybe not laughing because both guys are so stoic, but cracking a smile and then maybe put some sort of a excerpt. Is that what we call it? You know, saying like that guy's a jackass, isn't he? Like one of those where they're like laughing at the previous pick, you know, or something like that. Some sort of a comeback, because that's Khabib's strength is social media. Face to face, he's never going to win those battles. But once the other guy was present in Russia, I thought his team should have went to work and done that.
Like a picture of Putin like leaning over talking to somebody,
exactly.
And the thought bubble is, I put poison on him.
Something like that. Yeah, like his suit looks fake or anything, you know? I mean, anything. But it'll be interesting. What have you heard, by the way? Is this okay? I know it's easy to go, yes, it's a go, but when?
October in Vegas. And here's everything I've heard is that the goal right now. Now, it's still got to get through the court date, which is 2 weeks from now.
Right.
But pretty much everybody's assuming it's going to be probation. Then at that point, the UFC goes, well, he went through the legal process. I mean, we can't do anything more than the legal process. So he does that. He'll still have the other suits that he has to handle and all that. But you know, those won't be criminal suits, obviously. So he'll start to deal with the money. But I think after that is done, he's on probation. His visa's good to go. All that. I think they're going to do it for October. And the other thing is, it makes me wonder if all this stuff with Cyborg and Nunes is Cyborg and her camp playing a little bit of chess and saying,
how about we agree in October?
Boy, wouldn't it be nice to get on that card and get a little taste of those pay-per-view buys generated?
Yeah, September's too soon and December's too late. How about we meet in the middle of October? And both are champions. They should both be wanting that.
But that's why I think I'm just guessing here, but I'm assuming that Cyborg's team is hearing the same things that I'm hearing, and that they're trying to say, hey, if we've only got a couple of fights left in this game, yes, we don't want to wait for December, but it's not because there's some kind of timeline on our career. It's that, boy, it sure as hell would be nice to get a little taste of those pay-per-view buys from the Connor card.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Anthony Smith, UFC light heavyweight, who's fighting Mauricio Shogun Rua on Sunday out in Hamburg, Germany. It's UFC Fight Night 134. Stay close. We'll be right back.
They can drink Mentos-flavored Diet Coke without their stomachs giving a single fuck. They are Gorgeous George and Goes. And this is MMA Junkie Radio.
All right, soccer geeks, you thought it was over, but more soccer headed your way. Listen to this read. The SiriusXM FC ICC Broadcast Fantasy Camp is back. This is your chance to be a part of the SiriusXM FC broadcast crew when Manchester United face Liverpool in Ann Arbor, Michigan. One grand prize winner and a guest will get round-trip airfare to Ann Arbor, Michigan, hotel accommodations for 2 nights, 2 tickets to the match, and press box credentials. The winner will get to be on the air as part of the SiriusXM FC broadcast. For official rules and to enter and more details, go to SiriusXM.com/SiriusXMFC. Do that before July 19th. No additional purchase is necessary. Danny, can I get in that?
I mean, I could go to the rules, but I'm gonna assume it's the same. You know what? It's one of those things where maybe you can just ask. We can ask the FC channel if you can just be the broadcast.
Oh man, that would be incredibly cool. All right, let's get to our next guest. His name is Anthony Smith. Anthony has 29 wins in his career of mixed martial arts. 24 of those have been finishes. 15 by KO, 11 by submissions. He's won 4 of his last 5, including his last one, which was hammering of Rashad Evans at UFC 225, as he is now back in the light heavyweight division. That, of course, put him on the radar and back on the map as someone who should fill in. Mauricio Shogun Rua had lost his opponent, and so now he's traveling to Hamburg, Germany to face Mauricio Shogun Rua. He could steal all that shine too. He joins us now on the hotline. What's up, Anthony? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good, man. Talk about timing. You could be in the right spot to take out 2 former champs, 2 legends of the sport, and get on the radar of Daniel Cormier, who is looking to defend at some point before fighting Brock Lesnar to defend his 205 belt.
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed to work out kind of perfect with just the move to 205, and I got in and got out real quick with Rashad, and I was uninjured, so I was able to stay in decent shape and have the ability to take a short notice opportunity like this.
All right, this is one of those things where like Shogun's still in his 30s, but I'm sure, Anthony, at some point you sat around with your homies and thought, man, that's Shogun, you know what I mean? And I don't even know if at some point you even thought to yourself, boy, I'd love to get in there with him, because your first fight was in 2008. Shogun by then had already won a Grand Prix, and he was destroying out in Pride, and then of course he came over to the UFC. But can you talk about the first time you saw Shogun fight and what you thought of him, and did you ever think you'd match up against him?
Well, I never put myself in a position to ever think about what it would be like to fight those guys. Especially once I started making my way up, they were in different weight classes, so it wasn't even something that I considered. But I'd always looked up to Rashad and Shogun.
Right.
And I've always been a huge Shogun fan, because I think our styles are similar. We push forward, we're just scrappy and nasty, and Shogun's one of the meanest guys out there as far as his fight style goes. So it's always been someone that I've always looked up to. I remember sitting in some friends' garages watching old fights and just having some beers and just talking about how awesome it would be to be in a position that he's in. Not necessarily so much fighting him, but to do the things that he was able to do and reach the peaks that he's able to reach. And now it's just, it's crazy. Those same friends are reaching out now, talking about how nuts it is that, I'm in a position where those 2 guys are the people that I used to idolize are now guys that I am rivals with. It's just a crazy position to be in, man. It's crazy how the wheels of life, go around to this, to put me in this situation I'm in now.
Yeah, no doubt. Anthony Smith joining us here on MMA Junkie Radio, headlining UFC Fight Night 134 in Hamburg, Germany on Sunday. Let me reemphasize this. This is a Sunday card. Him and Shogun doing battle in the main event. All right, what do you have for Anthony Smith?
Anthony, on that same topic of legends, I mean, even if you go back, Hector Lombard, that name's been around for a long time. He was a champion in another organization. Going forward from here, would you like to have that type of matchup again with maybe somebody else, or are you kind of looking more towards fresh matchups going forward?
Oh, I'm definitely looking forward to fresh matchups, and honestly, I'm looking forward to, I really believe that I'm going to go in there and I'm going to finish Shogun in devastating fashion, and I want you know, the whole legend killer thing is kind of cool. That's kind of the thing that people are attaching to me. But, you know, eventually people are going to wonder, how am I going to fare with the guys that are closer to my age and kind of where I'm at in my career. And I'm really looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to getting through Shogun and looking at matchups with, you know, guys like Latifi and, you know, Corey Anderson, or, you know, guys, you know, even Vulcan and hopefully, you know, your Rockholds and your Gustafsons. Like, those are the guys that I really trying to get to. You know, it just happens to be that I have to go through these guys to get there, and it doesn't mean that they're any less dangerous. You know, it's just I'm really looking forward to just starting to pick at those guys in the top 5.
Can you take me through the process of getting the phone call for this? I'm sure there's certain things that you have to go through. Can you maybe rank them? One of them's got to be the location, Hamburg, Germany, the opponent, you know, where you're at physically. Can you make the weight, that sort of stuff? Can you kind of rank how you go through that decision process?
I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys. There was no decision-making process. You know, I say it all the time, and I think that a lot of fighters kind of make it a kind of a cliche saying. You know, I'll fight anyone, anytime, any place. But I really mean it when I say it, and it doesn't really. And the names don't matter to me. My manager called me not with a question, "Will I fight Shogun?" It was, "You're fighting Shogun in 3 weeks in Germany," and I said, "Cool, send the contract," and we hung up. It was literally a 2-minute phone call. That's how my brain works. It's how I manage. That's how we do it. It doesn't matter to me. I literally don't care. You could send a blank contract over and I would sign it, and it could be a surprise. It doesn't matter to me. So there wasn't no, do you want to fight him? Are you on weight? Can you do it? I'm always ready. And since I moved up to 205, the weight is no longer an issue, and the name literally doesn't matter. He could have said it's Brock Lesnar, and I would have had the same reaction and hung the phone up. It doesn't matter to me. So, I mean, that's how it went. You know, I was trying to get the Lincoln fight, and that didn't pan out. It wasn't looking like I was going to be able to get a fight, you know, in my home state. And this opportunity popped up, and, you know, it's already pretty obvious that I've already talked about in other interviews that I wanted to fight Shogun and that I liked the matchup. And, you know, it popped up, and my manager said, "Yeah, we'll take it." Called me and said, you know, they're going to send the contract, and I said, "All right."
I'm staring at Anthony's picture here on Twitter. His Twitter handle, by the way, is @LionheartSmith. Give him a follow. He looks real sharp in that suit, right, with the glasses. And he's telling the story about his manager calling and saying, "You're fighting, or you're taking out Shogun in Hamburg, Germany in 3 weeks." Doesn't he sound and look like an assassin right now?
A little bit.
He
I was
goes,
thinking Clark Kent to Superman.
He goes,
yeah,
"Send the contract over, you know, send the contract over." And then he's just going in his shed and looking at whatever he's going to need to take out Shogun. But he totally sounds like we're talking to an assassin right now. The way you phrased all that. All right, Dan Tom, our fight analyst. What do you have for Anthony Smith?
Well, it feels like I'm watching an assassin when I watch Anthony Smith's game. And Anthony, big fan of your game, man. And it's kind of crazy, though. I mean, this is a short notice fight. This is a big name like Shogun Hua. And I'm looking at the odds here, and, you know, no disrespect, I was actually kind of surprised to see you as an over 2.5 to 1 favorite. Now, I say that because watching your career and following your career, I almost felt like I'd be defending your game at times. You know, I didn't feel like the public perception, maybe you got enough as credit as you deserve. So that's why I kind of say it almost seems as a surprise. Does any of that resonate with you? Does that motivate you? Do you even notice it at all?
No, I don't really. As far as the odds go and stuff like that, it is a little bit surprising that I'm a favorite. You know, I think that the finish over Rashad probably has a lot to do with that. And Shogun's been pretty inactive. I think by the time we fight, it'd be a year and 4 months or something like that. So, you know, I think that probably has a lot to do with it. But at the end of the day, none of that shit really matters. You know, I don't think that Shogun thinks that it matters either. You know, but as far as my fight style, you know, it's easy. It's really easy to look at my losses and kind of dismiss me and stuff like that. But if you really dig into it, I've actually only been knocked out 1 time, and you know, a lot of those you know, stoppages were way early in my career. You know, in my early 20s. You know, I think a couple of them I might even have been 19 years old. So, you know, I took a lot of tough fights real early on, and I been on a 4-fight losing streak twice. You know, so I mean, but as of recently, I think that if you looked at my recent career, I think that it'd be hard to make the argument that I shouldn't be the favorite over Shogun. You know, I think I've been much more active, and you know, I think that I've been in some pretty tough fights.
He's right. Right around the time he started with Bellator, he's gone on a 12-2 run. And like I said before, he's won 4 of his last 5. So there's huge turnaround. Sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Oh, no worries. I agree with that, Anthony. And we talk about that kind of prototype of fighter on this show a lot. A name like Jorge Masvidal will often get mentioned, where you get these guys where you have to remember that they have a lot of experience, but they also got it at a young age. And, every fighter reacts differently to that experience, but you can't, you have to judge carefully when you judge those early fights. You can't write somebody off. But by the other side of the token, we have Shogun, who his experience is obviously more famous, if you will, as far as what he did in Pride and whatnot. But the thing is, Anthony, when you have a lot of these older fighters, it seems like there's a lot of footage to kind of draw from, as far as we can identify their style. Now, without giving away too much, I'm sure you and your team are very well prepared for this. But was Shogun being such a popular fighter? Was it kind of easier to know what you're going in there against?
I don't think so much of him being so popular. I think that he hasn't changed his style much since even the Pride days. I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but when I see Shogun fight in his later Pride days compared to how he's looked in the UFC, I don't see a whole lot of difference.
I agree.
I see a little bit ups and downs. But I honestly, man, you guys know me. I don't hide what I have planned. I'm going to go in there and you can't back up from Shogun. You can't let him back you down. If he gets throwing that overhand left hook thing that he hit Vellante with about 100 times, you're gonna have a long night, catching those. So you can't let Shogun bully you. You can't let him push you around in there. And I think that stylistically, it's why I like the matchup so much. Is I think that I'm the perfect style for Shogun and for the fans. I think it's going to be an exciting fight. But also, if you meet Shogun in the middle, it's going to be 2 bulls running into each other, and we're going to figure out which one's bigger, And I'm okay with that, and I think the Shogun is too. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Shogun go a little bit more wrestling heavy because he's smart. He's not an idiot, and he knows that if you look at my record, that I have the ability to knock you out with anything, whether it's elbows, knees, punches, kicks, whatever. I have the ability to do that, and I'm younger, and I'm going to be bigger than he is, and he's a very, very crafty fighter. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Shogun go a little bit more wrestling heavy in this fight, which is completely fine with me.
And he's right, because his last 4 wins have all been initiated by a different strike. The Mutatic fight was an elbow. The Sanchez fight was a head kick.
Yep.
Punches in the Lombard fight, and then the knee against Rashad Evans. So a diverse attack by Anthony Smith. And Anthony, isn't it unique? So Shogun's on a 3-fight win streak. If he wins, DC really wants that fight. If he loses, now, of course, you have every right to throw your hand up, and then we have to wait out Gustafsson, who also wants DC, except that's not his first choice because they fought before, and he also said it didn't pay much. So you're in a pretty solid position, my man, right here. The 205 division, it's gone through some changes. A few guys have gone over to Bellator. A few guys moved down to middleweight, and now we got a champ who can't decide, or, well, to be fair, it's only been a week, who hasn't decided what's next for him. But either way, good timing and exciting times for you.
Absolutely, and I'm absolutely going to stick my hand up, especially if the fight goes the way that I see it going. I just don't foresee any way in my head that Shogun gets out of there with the W. I just don't see it. I just feel like it's my time, and I'm on, and everything's firing on all cylinders right now. And I think it's my turn. Shogun had his time. All those guys had their time, and I think it's my turn. And I think that by DC mentioning that puts him in a position to where, if he thinks the Shogun is the next guy, and I beat him, then I think rightfully he gave me the opportunity to put my hand up. I think that DC did that for me, and I don't even know if he realizes that he did that. But I think that he isn't real excited about the Gustafsson fight for whatever reason, whether that's him, whether it's a money thing or whether it's just a new matchup or whatever. I think that I'm a fresh face, and I think that that's an exciting fight for the fans, me versus DC. But, I haven't even thought about that right now. I've been worried about Shogun.
Right. Yep, first things first, Sunday, UFC Fight Night 134 in Hamburg. Folks, things start off at 10:30 a.m. Eastern on the UFC Fight Pass, 3 fights there. Then at noon Eastern, Fox Sports 1 has you covered. And then at 2 p.m. Eastern, they stay on Fox Sports 1. That's when the main card starts. Anthony Smith, our guest here, will be in the main event versus Mauricio Shogun. Anthony, thanks for squeezing us in here. I know you got a lot to do before you head on out to Germany, so we really appreciate your time. It's always great catching up with you. Congrats on headlining this event. That off of what you did with Rashad Evans. Beautiful work there at 205.
Thanks a lot, guys. And as always appreciate the platform. And, I'm always willing to come on here anytime you guys have a spot for me.
Thank you, sir. Take care, my man.
Take it easy, Anthony.
All right, take care, guys.
See ya. All right, that's Anthony Smith. Follow him on Twitter at LionheartSmith. Check out that pic. He totally looks like somebody who, all you got to do is send him a contract, and he'll take somebody out, right?
Then he just hits something on the wall. It slides down. There's a bunch of guns on the wall. He just picks the one he wants, right?
Dude, just watching him like march toward a guy in a cage, like they're all scary in the UFC. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be in the cage with any of them, okay? But he's like one of the last guys. Like if you just, the menacing look, man. This is all 6'4", meanness coming at you.
Yeah,
no, thank you.
All right, let's take a break here. You're listening to MMA Junkie Radio on Sirius XM Rush 93. I want to get this one out of the way. That way we can just cruise to the finish line. We may still have one more guest, and it's either going to be during our regular 2-hour slot or we might do a couple minutes of OT. So I want to at least clear this hurdle. All right, folks, stay close.
They taught Andy Griffith how to whistle. Here are Gorgeous George and Goes.
The 2018 NBA Summer League is lighting up Las Vegas, and NBA Radio is bringing you exclusive access to all the action. If you missed any of the interviews with Mavericks owner Mark Cuban, Warriors head coach Steve Kerr, Dr. J. Julius Erving, and many more, you can hear them streaming on your phone or at home on SiriusXM connected devices and speakers. Just search NBA Radio. Because when are the Strokes touring again?
Probably never.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's a bummer. Why, they don't get along? They broke up?
They don't get along. They do like little concerts here and there to make money, but that's it.
I also felt bad for... Sorry, I'm still hung up on Steve Kerr. I also felt bad for clean-cut white dudes in the NBA because it felt like they never seemed like the height that they were supposed to be. Like Steve Kerr, like I could never picture Steve Kerr above 5'6". I don't know what it is.
So he's like 6'3", isn't he?
I know he is, but he looks like he's 5'6".
I learned that lesson when I met Nick Van Exel, and he's kind of the small guy on the court.
Yeah, he is.
Van Exel.
Yeah, he's about 6'1".
Yeah.
How about Steve Nash?
Van Exel for 3.
He was probably pushing 6 feet, and he was a 2-time consecutive MVP with Phoenix. But more than anything was that mop he had on his head. You know, like he just looked at him and go, "Yeah, I'll take him last. We'll take him." You know, but anyway, let's talk to Showtime in Tennessee. What's up, Showtime? It's yo time.
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
Hey, what's up,
Not
Showtime?
much. How about you?
And my guy John Morgan, what's going on? Hey, man, you didn't want to talk about this fight too much, man, but I want to talk about this fight because it cost me some fucking money, and I felt like he edged out a close decision, man, with this Glenn Bermudez fight. How did y'all score that fight?
Costed me too, Showtime.
Bermudez.
You know, to be fair, so I wanted Bermudez. I had a parlay that involved Bermudez. I've always liked Bermudez. I think, if I'm not mistaken, didn't he also author a vlog for us, Bermudez? So soft spot, out in the open, right?
Okay.
But those takedowns, they were there, but they weren't like, there wasn't devastation that followed them. You know what I mean? And that's why I knew that even though he was landing them, I wasn't sure that was solidifying rounds or solidifying the fight.
Well, the very first one was bullshit.
I'm trying to.
I don't know if he actually grabbed the cage, but he did enough for where the referee should have said something because it looked like that's what stopped him from getting that initial takedown.
Right.
Again.
And those are 2017 rules because Junior Santos was getting admonished for the fingers, up, down, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But God, I wanted him to, but I knew that there was a strong possibility they could call out Glenn's thing. I don't feel like it was a robbery. I don't think anyone feels that way, right?
I don't think it was a robbery either. There were a lot of people scoring for Glenn online. It cost me Showtime. My bias was there both in the pick and in the betting, but I don't think it was a robbery. In fact, I think one of the scorecards was defensible because one of the scorecards for Glenn was a 29-28 where they gave Glenn round 1, which obviously I don't think anybody argues too much for, and round 2, which I still give to Bermudez based on the takedowns, especially Bermudez, though he didn't help himself with the comment about, I guess I have to finish now, which I think shot himself in the foot, like what George said. But before that, Bermudez made a lot of great points where he is one of the, say what you will about his style, pros and cons, he's one of the more consistent guys in any weight class. That's why I actually like to bet on Bermudez, because you know what he's going to go and do out there. And he's putting out volume, and we know judges love pressure, forward pressure, volume. That wins a lot of scorecards when there's not a finish. Then you mix in some takedowns in there, which is true. It's what cost him in the Feely fight, and Bermudez correctly did reference that he did that, but even more takedowns with even more control time. But he didn't do enough damage, like George said, in the second round. Now, in the third round, this is where the 30-27 for Glenn is completely... I disagree with that. Because in the third round, not only did Bermudez do the same amount of volume and takedowns, but he actually landed the more devastating ground and pound. In my opinion, he may not have got as many elbows off, but they were thudding. They were just smashing Glenn's head right into the mat. You could hear him. They were brutal, and he was making it a point to add the ground and pound that he did not add in the second round. So I scored at 29-28 Bermudez. It's just a pain because it's not that I disagree with it being scored for Glenn. I want to see guys get rewarded for damage. I want to see guys get rewarded for fighting off their back, right? But we're not being consistent about it, and that's the problem. So the judges have even educated fans to educated media members. We're judging it off of this kind of BS criteria that we've been trained to, as opposed to the actual criteria, to where when they actually judge it for damage, we're like, whoa, what are they doing? And it creates an argument anyways. But yeah, that's my answer.
I don't think it was a robbery. I thought maybe it was a pickpocket.
Showtime.
But man, I'm just trying to see 30-20. I mean 30-27.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. That was.
Come on, man. I wouldn't have scored at 30-27 either way for either guy. You know, I'm like, damn, how did 30-27? I mean, and I agree when you don't finish a fight and you leave it up to those judges, man, to basically decide your fate and shit. You know, a lot of times it won't happen. I just was curious, man, how you guys scored it, because I scored it a close fight, but I thought he did enough. You know, had enough top control.
Well, something we alluded to in the show before Showtime. You're the perfect caller for this. Any other degenerate gamblers out there, maybe kind of keep that in mind when you're going to lay big money on these cards that are in these, you know, regions that we haven't been to. Because A, the scorecards, which we're pointing out in this fight, but also B, like Ghost said, a lot of the infractions, and we talked about earlier about the not as experienced referees going light on the infractions, and these fights can kind of get away from them. So something to keep in mind.
Thanks, buddy, for the call. All right, always great to hear from Showtime. And I had another Junkie Radio guy, Christopher, reach out to me in the middle of the event. He goes, "Hey, I want to buy Dan from Morgan a beer." I just happened to see that I was on Facebook and I happened to see that, and I go,
Nice.
well, I don't know about giving people's info out. So I reached out to Dan from Morgan because I have his his mobile. I go, somebody you haven't met wants to buy you a beer. Is it cool with you if I pass the info on? And he goes, yeah. So I passed it on. So I don't know if these two junkies wound up meeting and hanging out, but
Hopefully, that's
Junkie
awesome.
Nation has
Cool.
cool moments like that. And again, I won't just give out somebody's. And,
Yeah,
I just happen to
right.
have his because he had won something, so I needed to reach out to him and we talked. But I don't have everyone's number. But it just so happened that he was one guy I was able to track down. All right. How about this? Junior dos Santos, everything that happened with USADA. I noticed that the USADA Twitter handle went out of their way to say, hey, great to have Junior back, and here's all the things that happened with him, and he's a clean athlete, and blah blah blah. And Josh Barnett happened to reply to that, and he said, well, what about me? Because he fought through his problems as well, and same thing, they basically deemed that he wasn't intending to enhance his performance, except his took way longer to figure out.
Yeah.
And now, of course, he's no longer with the UFC. A lot of people are quick to jump when there's a problem like that and go, USADA sucks. There's nothing wrong with saying, wow, USADA misplayed that hand or made a mistake or whatever. But we all forget about the good that they've done as well. Because that is what we wanted. We wanted random testing, and here they are, and they've been able to catch a few athletes. But in that regard, I was curious. Do you think Josh had a point? Like, hey,
I thought he did.
I thought so too.
I thought he had a point. Josh wears his emotions on his sleeve.
He
and
presented
it's
a
gonna go
great
little
case
overboard,
and
but-
with a lot of detail. Now, of course, if you just look at the comments, oof, man, it can ruin your day. A lot of people are like, well, what about these other things? And it's true. Look, it is true. What about those other things? But those things are done. He's paid the price. He's lost the title and lost a lot of money and been suspended. But at least for this case, I thought he had a good point. Yeah. Junior dos Santos, I thought had he put Blagoy, it would have been such a great comeback for him, and we should be talking a little bit more about him. But right now all we're saying is congrats on the win, and let's see what's next. Whereas when these guys make some sort of a statement on the weekend before, I mean, we are glowing, and we're just saying we're trying to plug them in here and plug them in here and plug them in there. It's interesting to me how the result of the fight is it's not just important in terms of whether you win or lose. It's that emphatic win versus the win.
He's battling a lot of things, and a lot of people forget that there's a guy that sits on the sideline that at any time Cain Velasquez can just pop his name on the hat.
Yeah.
And that changes everything. And that's a guy who has 2 wins over Junior dos Santos. So you're right. I think if he would have stamped him out at the end, it would have made the difference for him to be able to ask for something more.
Yeah. I hope they go back to, I like when they go to a city for the first time or when they haven't been to one in a while. And it seems like the Northwest, for whatever reason, maybe I got it wrong. Portland, Seattle, Boise, I don't, Boise, did I say that right? Yeah, right. Even Oakland. They haven't been back to the city
Since
of
Anderson
Oakland, right?
and, Chale?
In Chale, yeah.
Wow.
Like, just the city of Oakland, like, why aren't we going there? You don't like Oakland?
Well, Oakland's coming to us now, right?
Huh? The Raiders? Yeah, they are. I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of cities that San Diego. Is it me, or has that one been a while too? That was Duffy and Mir. It was also the home of Diaz versus Paul Daly. Like, West Coast, man. I feel like it's produced a lot of great athletes. A lot of them come from the Northwest. A lot of them come from Northern California. A lot of them come from Southern California. I'd like to see a lot more from that. And by the way, if the UFC ever goes back to Mexico, I'd love to see him in TJ. Well, that's
I'm not gonna go. But yeah,
all you got to put is Mexico City and Monterrey and a few other cities, and you go, this stuff goes down there too. You know what I mean? But I just would like to see some more West Coast love.
Yeah, all right. I can feel that maybe.
Yeah. All right.
I'm shocked that they don't go back to Seattle.
We're good on breaks, right? Just want to make sure.
I think so, right? Danny?
Yeah. Danny can confirm.
Well,
Danny, you there?
I'm here. Whatever.
We're done on
we're,
breaks,
We're
right?
good on breaks. Just making sure, right?
Oh yeah, we're all done on breaks. Sorry, I was trying to answer on Facebook at the same time. Sorry.
Are you guys liking Brendan Fitzgerald as a
Yes.
play-by-play guy.
Yeah, I think
big
he's
ups on
quietly
Brendan.
gotten very good at it.
And too, I'm even more impressed because when we had him on our show, I was actually surprised to kind of see how little, not how little, I guess, but he was admitted himself. He was, a big follower of the sport, and you listen to some of the things that he references and some of the things that he's saying. You could tell that he's doing his homework, and I really appreciate that. You really kind of, guys like Brian Stan, I think, really set a standard, and I think the more that that gig continues, we'll look back on guys like Stan kind of changing the eras of commentary, just like, obviously Rogan is known for his whole era, and that's kind of untouchable, but this whole prep work these guys are bringing really ups to these commentators. They really do a good job because it really fills it out. I mean, if these fights go 15 minutes and they don't do their work, they don't have anything to really get you invested into them. And you can tell all these guys are doing their work. And Brendan in particular, because he had a later start and doesn't have as rich of a background as maybe a Jimmy Smith who fought, who called all these shows, and he's sitting there seamlessly working with all these guys. So big props to Brendan.
All right, guys, let's talk about something that happened last week that I say is unfortunate.
Okay.
But people loved at least talking about it because of the way it went down. And we know that the fights are the most important thing. What happens in that cage is the most important thing. But social media can blow up when something controversial happens. Get this. I'll see if I can give you a little bit of a timeline because we got to hurry through this because the show's going to end soon. And by the way, we are going to do a few minutes of overtime with Glover Teixeira. And maybe this will even spill out into that. I don't know. So just so you know, it's youtube.com. If you ever, if you're listening in the car, but at some point you reach the office or home and you do want to see, the studio and what goes on here, especially because we have a lot of in-studio guests. And by the way, Megan O'Leary will be co-hosting on Thursday, and Antonio and AJ McKee will be co-hosting on Friday. So lots coming your way in that department. All right. But aside from that, we are in Vegas. This is a cool studio. Stuff goes down. So check it out at youtube.com/MMAjunkie video. And give it a subscribe too, man, because we put out a lot of content on our YouTube channel. But anyway, so Izzy, Israel Adesanya got a win this past weekend. Noted kickboxer. Sorry, not this past weekend, the one before. And then the very next day, Kokan Saki, also noted striker, kickboxer, lost. Brendan Shaw was making a comment how a lot of these kickboxers are not always going to come over and shine as much as the UFC might like to paint that picture with their marketing, right? And so Izzy thought he was talking about him, and I could see that because he fits that bill, right? Brendan Schaub has already said he wasn't talking about him, but regardless, when you don't specify that, you leave it out in the open. Izzy, commented about that. He basically checked Brendan. But the important thing here is, or at least what we're going to talk about is, Dana White was also on that Instagram thread, and he's basically telling Izzy, Israel, hey, don't pay attention to that guy, and then starts bringing up his record in the UFC, 6-5. The only thing you're ever going to learn from him is how to get knocked out, blah, 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 blah. The other guy fires back. Hey, you took time from not folding Ronda Rousey's laundry to come in and chime in, blah, blah, blah. Few comments down. People are telling Dana to lay off Brendan. He's been successful. Dana White says when he stops riding Joe Rogan's coattails, you'll see how really not successful he is. And then, of course, the other guy says, Brendan Shaw pushes back one more time. He lists the successes that he's had in entertainment, and then says something along the lines, I would think Eskimo Brothers would be cool. Of course, everyone runs to Google. What's Eskimo Brothers? What does he mean? And basically, if you look at Urban Dictionary, or if you're from the streets, you'll know that means two dudes have fancied a young lady at some point, or maybe further than that. I don't like to add to what it is, but this was such a big story that I at least wanted to get your guys' thoughts. I'll just say mine real quick. I don't mind the jabs back and forth, but I always feel like there's a line. All right, in this case, with these allegations, you got a dude who's got a wife and kids at home in Dana White, and then the subject that's being talked about here, presumably, a lot of people are speculating maybe Ronda Rousey, who is now married and has a husband. They just do not need to be brought into something like this between two people that have kind of been button heads over the years. I know it's Dana's style. Some people say, hey, you should be more buttoned up like Adam Silver or what's the NFL guy's name? I almost said Pete Rozelle. He was.
Yeah, I was about to say
I'm like
Paul
three
Tagliabue.
commissioners. I'm like three commissioners
The guy
behind.
that
What's
wears
his
the
name, John?
parka.
Goodell. You know, but then others will say, no, that's what makes them different. So look, I don't want to argue that because we all have different opinions. But man, I love when these guys jab back and forth. I even don't mind it so much when Dana does it because it's what in a way makes him unique. But I thought when Brendan said that he was out of line, man. Like I didn't like it. How about you guys?
I think he is out of line in saying that, but I've always said, if you have skeletons in your closet, maybe social media is not the place for you to show up, because not everybody plays by the rules, and that's what you have to realize with social media. As far as his jab about Brendan's record, I have issue with that because a guy he brought up. I mean, even if you look at basketball, right? Steve Kerr, Tyronn Lue, were these the best players in the NBA? No, but guess what they have? Championship rings as coaches, right? Doesn't always transfer over that way.
And as athletes, they did get a ring, even though they, well, Kerr actually hit that shot. So
Yeah,
right.
But I know
what
they're
you're
the
saying.
most
They're not
dominant
all-time
guys,
greats.
no, right?
Yeah.
But they still had great opinions enough to coach teams on to championships, right?
Right.
So I think that's kind of a silly argument. I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
Well, I think that shot that Kerr landed, who it hurt the most? Jeff Hornacek. That because it was between Kerr and Hornacek for a clean-cut white dude title in the NBA. Let's be honest, right, guys? Like all time, right there. Like I'll wait till you find a better name. But no, I agree. I thought it was a bad move. I mean, Dana, the criticisms kind of that's been there for him for the last 10 years are kind of still prevalent now. As far as could he be more professional or this or that. But as far as Brendan's side of the situation goes, someone on Twitter said it best, and I'm going to brutalize it because I don't remember how they said it, but it's bad when you can come with exact facts, defend yourself in a situation where you should be the right guy and still come off like a douchebag. And I think that's pretty apt, and especially with the note that not coming at Brandon, but just mainly with the note that Ghost said. It's not like he's still with this person that they shared the fishing hole with, hence the Eskimo Brothers thing. He actually has he's moved on. He's got a wife and kids who have to, deal with all the stuff that comes along with profession already. Like that just didn't seem like the right move for them.
Yeah, man. I see. Brendan is a locker room guy. He played football, and if you listen to his show, he seems like the type of guy that says, "Hey, here's a beer. Let's grab some pizza. Let's watch some fight." Like, he shouldn't be foreign to this. That's why I thought, he has enough of a pushback to just leave it alone, but not go on the personal side. The personal side is something that I've always felt like it's just there's a limit. I didn't like it. Colby cracks me up, but I didn't like it when he attacked Perry's ex-girlfriend's, looks or whatever. It's like, I don't know. Goes good point in that enter social media and all's game. Yeah. Sirius XM audience, you got more promotions headed your way, more shows, and we're going to do some OT.
The nighttime turning night into daytime. If you see it once, you'll never be the same again. I'm gonna keep on the run. I'm gonna have me some fun. It cost me my very last dime. If I wind up broke, well, I'll always.
Guys, clear for overtime.
All right, so we're staying a couple minutes of overtime here. If you guys still want to finish out what we were discussing, that's fine too. But otherwise, I'm going to see if Danny can connect with Glover Teixeira, who's in the co-main event slot, versus Corey Anderson out in Hamburg. Glover, should he win, would have 3 of 4. That's what we call a run. It's not a streak because he's only won his previous fight. It would be a 2-fight streak, but he also can boast and say, I've won 3 of my last 4. And in this division that's so shallow and anything can happen, I think it's a huge fight for him. He's never lost to DC, so he's fought for a title, but he's lost to John Jones, but he's never fought DC.
Yeah.
So he would have every right if Alex loses his fight and Shogun loses his fight to say, "What about me?"
Yeah, man.
Thanks, Hoyce. How about you? Do you have anything to add, or?
I mean, he already stated his case after his last fight. We forget about these call-outs because it feels like a lot of fighters will do them, and they're either a hit, which is like 2%, or a miss, which is like a 98%. I think Glover's was kind of a miss, but when you think about it and you lay it out the way you did, I'll steal a phrase from Anthony Smith, George. What did he say in our interview we just had with him? It earns him a right to raise his hand. And I like the way he put that, right? Because it wasn't saying, I'm calling for this. I mean, he gets it, I get it. It wasn't, putting it so simple. I think, and I don't know, we'll have to ask Glover, but, putting in the way that the steal from Anthony Smith, I think it earns him the right to raise his hand. I think that's fair to say, right?
I think so. And he steamrolled Serkinov So that was a good win on his behalf. But again, he still has to get past his opponent. But that's how you create it. It may not go over well the first time, but you start putting yourself out there. You have to stand out from everyone else that wins on the card. We just went through Boise, and we raced through some names and other names. We spent some time talking about it.
Yeah, sure.
So I don't know. Now it's funny because DC, I think all he's thinking about is Lesnar and Price sailing off into the sunset, and I think he's just waiting to see if anyone else is worth him losing 40 pounds for. You know what I mean?
But he seems so determined. Like, that's the first thing he says is, I'm defending 205. I think he's already past that. I think it's just figuring out who it's going to be.
I also think he knows kind of something that we spoke about, his accolades, that with just a defense in any of those divisions, how much that'll kind of put him ahead in the race for, keeping that lead, so to speak.
Yeah, and he made a good point in the press conference. He was saying it's not like he had to gain weight to be a heavyweight. He's always that weight. It's just the losing of the weight to be a light heavyweight.
He did say that, but then he also said that if we would have seen him the first couple days of the camp, he was useless, and he was...
But that was a concern for heavyweight.
Right.
We're talking about light heavyweight, right? Having to lose those 40.
Well, light heavyweight, when he weighed in, he would fight at 228 to 235. Those were the different weights that he fought on Fight Night. This 246 was almost a full, 16 to 11 pounds more than he normally carries. Now, that said, I mean, how do you argue with a one-round knockout of Stipe Miocic, right? But still, I think he would basically diet down to 205 and then probably want to weigh in a svelte 230, 235 for whoever he's dancing with at that particular moment.
What's even funnier is that it's funny because it feels like he's a diminished Daniel Cormier, and I'm saying diminished Daniel Cormier because let's just go off his definition. Look at all the post-fight interviews he's done since UFC 226, and he's saying, reinforcing his point at heavyweight by saying, no, I wasn't being able to knock out guys at heavyweight, light heavyweight. I've always had this power. No, I've always had this durability. No, when you make those cases true, and that's great, and it kind of opens our eyes to his abilities at heavyweight, like he did at UFC 226. But now, if you take the same things Daniel Cormier is saying, by his own admission, does that mean we've been seeing just a diminished Daniel Cormier fighting at light heavyweight all these years, one that can't hit as hard or take as hard of a shot, but does everything else right?
No. I mean, to get past Anthony Johnson twice, to outstrike Gustafsson, to battle Jones for a few rounds. Well, he went the distance in the first fight. I think he only had one round that he won in that first fight, maybe two. But that second fight, he had some moments prior to him getting iced. He was actually moving around and doing real well. So all that doesn't come from a Cormier that's... I know you're not calling him ineffective,
right.
But still, that's a different Cormier from the other Cormier.
I'm just saying, did he do it?
I think we're talking now about a businessman versus a competitor. I don't know. I don't even think he says it adds to his legacy, but what will it do? Whoever, I mean, he could beat the next 5 light heavyweights, and people will still have a problem with, well, you still haven't beaten Jones. So why not just leave that alone? You already shut a lot of people up by beating Miocic. Maybe defend heavyweight and then finish off with Lesnar and get the hell out of Dodge, or just wait for Lesnar. The legacy's been cemented in a way.
I think it would still help a little bit.
It would. I mean, it's you can look at two ways. A defense does a lot either way for the argument for what he's done, because no one's defended the titles. We go back to even Dan Henderson, as far as his 2 Pride titles, Connor's 2 Cage Warriors, Connor's 2 lightweights. None of those scenarios were defended, but if he defends in light heavyweight, it's damn if you do, damn if you don't. You defend in light heavyweight, well, you're defending in the division that you have an asterisk that you can't get rid of. Unless you're defending against John Jones, then it's not going to matter to a lot of fans, sadly, right? Whereas heavyweight, yes, you're right. Brother George, why bother? I agree. Just go up to heavyweight. But I think Daniel knows that, well, if he has a defense at light heavyweight, it's going to be a guy like Brock Lesnar that, again, the fans aren't probably going to have a problem with that and be like, well, he did defend it. Those other multi-divisional champs didn't defend. But look who Daniel Cormier defended against, a pro wrestler who hasn't won since 2012 or whatever kind of spin you want to put on it. Or
you even gave that person a voice. That person's a moron. And you even gave him the moron voice.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because to get to Lesnar, he went through Miocic, arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time, and he beat him in the first round. So, I don't know. I just find it hard to believe that 205 will really be where he goes back. For some reason, I don't know. I think it's something that he said he needed to say. He also told us before he fought Miocic that he didn't want to mix it up with heavyweights. That was Kane's division. Next thing you know,
Exactly,
hey,
yeah,
me and
it's tough.
Miocic are coaching and then fighting later in the year. So, you know, he's slick. He's a good friend of the show, but I think he tap dances a lot, even when we try and put him on Front Street or keep it real, or as they say in the hood, 100.
I completely disagree. I don't think that was the moron voice. I thought that was more the authoritative principal voice. Oh, you need to get your homework.
No,
right?
he did it differently.
But
He went,
the moron voice
he defeated Brock
Lesnar. That's the moron voice, right?
Yeah. All right, shout out in the YouTube chat. I'm going to give Glover like 55 seconds, and then otherwise we got to bounce out of here. In the YouTube chat, shout out to Knuckle Up 101.
Yeah.
He loves him some Danny Okers. Don Piccolo, a.k.a. Doncho, or Don from Rancho Santa Margarita.
Uncle Steve.
Martin Stabillo hanging out in the chat as well. MMA Junkie, shout out to our website, hanging out as well. I think that's Ken Hathaway. Juan Ramirez, he's got 2 years left cheering for the Raiders, and then that's it. They become the Las Vegas Raiders.
Is he one of those guys that'll stop?
I don't know if he'll be as cheerful in the morning. I don't know.
I know a few people are going to completely stop.
Yeah.
I think he's one of them.
Well, it's a different city. It's different identity. They're still the Raiders, so I don't. It's how you look at it. Josh Hernandez hanging out in the chat, as is Casper Illuminated, who says he would defeat all of us in a fight. Okay, Danny, he said call now. So let's do that real fast.
He must have heard George.
Yeah. He just got through security. Who are some of these other ones? There's one more that's tough to pronounce in here. ASI BFFL 143.
Casper's just calling people out in the chat. Like, I'll beat you, I'll beat you, I'll beat you.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. We're going to close out here with Glover Teixeira. It'll be a quick interview. He's got to get to his flight, and we got to get the hell on out. But Glover will be fighting Corey Anderson this Sunday at UFC 134, also known as UFC Hamburg. You can watch the fights on Fox Sports 1 starting at 2 p.m. Eastern start time. Folks, are you paying attention? The fights are on Sunday, and the main card starts at 2 p.m. Eastern. That's 11 a.m. for us. So you don't want to say, oh, man, I missed out. What the hell? That's why I'm going to give you guys as many nudges as I can throughout the week. Joining us now on the hotline is Glover Teixeira. What's up, Glover? How you doing?
Well, I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Good. You entered that security line like an hour ago. Would you have like a hairdryer or something? Did security have to pull you over?
No, man. I'm JFK, bro. It's like a little crazy.
Yeah. Plus,
JFK is always crazy.
Yeah.
I was at when you called us, I was at checking in, so the security and everything else.
Yeah, I'm just giving you a hard time. Plus, I know that you don't have much hair to blow dry, so that was. I should have picked something else. All right.
No blow dry.
Glover, you got Corey Anderson ahead of you on Sunday in Hamburg. Now, 205 is interesting right now because DC says he wants to fight Shogun, who's won 3 in a row. But if Shogun loses, then maybe he'll take a look at Alex. But then Alex might lose at UFC 227 in a few weeks. And you've never fought DC, and you would have 3 of 4 wins in your last 4 fights if you can get past Corey Anderson, so you could easily be in the mix. Is that how you're seeing it, Glover?
Oh, for sure, man. We're always in the mix. I mean, it's like a situation right now. You see the kids crying. It's like funny. But yeah, man, it's a situation right now that like I have to worry about Corey Anderson. I have to be a great performance against Corey Anderson, and see what happens next. I would love to fight DC. He's a great fighter. I'm so happy for him. He did amazing job last fight, and who knows,
Right. Corey Anderson, I'm going to be honest, I had kind of ridden him off a little bit, but man, his last performance was really, really top notch. And I know you fighters always say, I'm preparing for the best, and then you insert the name of the fighter, but what do you think of Corey Anderson's last fight, and how excited are you about this matchup?
Oh, he did great last fight. Like you say, he's a young guy, and he keeps getting better. he did a great job, like, against Pat Cummins. He take him down like a bunch of time every time he wants to do it. And Pat Cummins is a high-level wrestler, and he just do whatever you want with him, pretty much.
Right. Glover Teixeira is our guest here on MMA Junkie Radio. He has got 27 wins in his career, and 23 of those have been stoppages. He has defeated Rashad Evans in his career. He's also defeated Ovin St. Preux, Ryan Bader, Quinton Jackson. Had a really, really wonderful career here in the UFC, and now he's in the co-main event slot at UFC Fight Night 134 in Hamburg, Germany. His opponent that night will be Corey Anderson. All right, Goes, what do you have for Glover Teixeira?
Glover, when you initially lost your opponent and you got that phone call from the UFC, was it a phone call telling you that your opponent had fallen out of the fight and they're looking for someone, or did they already have a name ready for you?
No, they were looking for someone, They called, they said, Chiefy got hurt, so they were looking for someone, and I was like, at that point, I was just like, I fight anyone that could get in, and I would just accept the fight, and thank God Corey Anderson did, because, I haven't fought in 7 months, and I've been training so much, man, doing this camp, the camp was great, and I just wanted to get somebody over there to fight.
The UFC roster is so big, so massive, that when they told you Corey Anderson, did you know exactly who he was and, like, who his last couple fights were? Like, how long did it take you to get situated with all that?
The guy's been around. Of course I knew who Corey Anderson was. As a professional, I have to look everybody in the light heavyweight, unless the guy's, like, just started, you kind of like, I haven't followed so much, but... and the guy's been around like Corey Anderson, for sure. You'll see him, you look at him as could be a future opponent, And, yes, at the fight with Latifi, he's a little shorter, little bit different styles, But, at this point in UFC, you have to be prepared for everything. You have to train very hard and not look as one opponent, because anything can happen. You see how many fights that change in the last minute, in every event, pretty much.
All right, our fight analyst Dan Tom's got a question for you. Dan, what do you have for Glover?
Hey Glover, you said as a professional, you got to keep an eye out for everybody in your division. But when I look at the top guys, at least traditionally at light heavyweight, it feels like wrestling is very important, obviously in all divisions, but especially for the guys there. Either because you have a guy like a DC who's obviously a great wrestler, or because you have really good strikers who, even though they have underrated wrestling, maybe the grappling may be a better path to take. So Glover, let me ask you, with you facing a wrestler. Have you done have you brought in anybody specific into your camp? I know you run your camps out of Connecticut and Danbury, I believe. But have you been able to bring in any wrestlers for this camp?
No, I'm not a straight wrestler this time, but I have a great guy that train with me, Rafael Correia, Caio Magalhães, very good jiu-jitsu and a very good wrestler too. He doesn't have look at my fights too. I don't have a wrestling background. I did some wrestling in Brazil. I was a Brazilian champion, but not as high level of a Cormier or Pat Cummins, all those guys wrestler. You know what I mean? But when it comes to MMA wrestling, I've been wrestling for so long, man. I learned how to fight with John Hackerman and Chuck Liddell, so I had to learn how to wrestle, I had to learn how to wrestle. And the wrestler actually is one of my my strongest point in my fight, to be honest, I feel very comfortable with wrestling with anyone. Straight wrestling would be a little bit different stuff, but as MMA wrestling, combo with the punches and put it together, I feel very comfortable.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Even before your loss to Phil Davis, wrestling was something that you always were strong in your game, and since that one hiccup, none of your losses were ever because of that reason, and you've been very strong there, Glover. But just about your opponent though, and I guess more question about his wrestling. Do you see Corey Anderson as having good MMA wrestling like a Phil Davis, or where do you kind of place Corey Anderson and his skill set?
Listen, man. It's hard. The hardest part for me. I don't want to take a credit from Phil Davis back then. The hardest part for me is talk about the Phil Davis. I can talk about any fight. I can talk about like Anthony Jones fight. That I got caught and I got KO quick. But like I hate talk about Phil Davis fight because I had a horrible cut in that fight, and I should be able to fight, man. That way I was ridiculous. Like I got swallows up my joints, everything. I was tired in the first round. Was very bad cut, a weight cut, and after that I just changed my whole life. I changed my whole style of eating and diet and everything else. So I don't like to talk about too much, but compared to like Corey Anderson, he does have a good MMA wrestling. He does have like striking with like look what he did with Pat Cummins his last fight. He combo well with punches and he put it together. And he's a very good young guy that's coming up. Man, I just think I have too much for him. I say I'm gonna push him and appreciate that he take the fight, but I have to do my job. I have to finish this fight.
All right, Glover. Hey, I know you got to catch.
I'm not using Twitter much. I don't use Instagram too much, so I have to put excited fights. So maybe I can get some of the big fights, man. Maybe I can call me attention a little bit. You know what I mean?
How come you've decided not to use
Instagram and calling people like everybody else doing now?
How come you've decided not to use much social media?
Not decided. I never really did it. It's not my. I don't know. It's just not my thing. Sometimes I just forget. And I was like, go like days without losing. It's my style a little bit. Maybe a little bit like in the old time. It's just like I check around stuff and I check around funny stuff. But I'm not in social media too much. I know I should do it. I know it's something that I the athletes, where I'm fighting right now, I should be using more, but it's just me, man. I don't really care. I'm a person that likes to sit down and have a good talk with somebody, but and I'm not a social media person.
I got you. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for doing the show here. I know you're at the airport getting ready to catch your flight. So first of all, safe travels to Hamburg, Germany, and good luck on Sunday. We'll be tuning in. This is an exciting card here and an exciting 2-week run for the light heavyweights to see who might be next for Daniel Cormier. And I think it's great that you're one of the guys that's in a running for a possible title shot.
We always do it, man. We're always going to keep grinding and keep fighting, Thank you. Thank you very much for the interview.
Okay. Take care, Glover.
All right. All right, man. Thank you.
Bye. And that's what you do, folks. You stockpile enough wins like the ones I mentioned. Bader, Quinton, Ovin St. Prude, Rashad, Serkinov, and you can sustain some of these losses. He's only lost to the best. Look at this. Gustafson, Johnson, Davis, and Jones.
Wow.
Other than that, he has been smashing in the UFC since 2012, and he probably arrived in the UFC about 3 years later than he should have, because by the time he got to UFC, he was 18-2, but he had some visa issues that he finally did resolve. But yeah, the Cummins, Evans, and Serkinov fight all ended with him viciously KOing. Now he's also been on the receiving end of those too. Anyway. Thank you to Glover for his time, and of course earlier thank you to Anthony Smith for his time. Tomorrow looks like we'll have some PFL fighters on, as well as Justin Ledette, UFC heavyweights. Wednesday we're having Curtis Blades and Bevon Lewis, recent winner at Contender Series. Megan Olivia will co-host Thursday with us in studio. Antonio and AJ McKee will co-host with us on Friday. So lots happening this week, and we'll be filling in more spots. Those aren't the only guests that we're going to have. We're going to be talking to a lot of people. But fun show recapping Bellator, UFC. It's all in the books. And now we start looking forward to Hamburg and then L.A. after that. And I think Nebraska after that. And how about after that goes is football.
Oh, finally.
You digging it?
Yeah, I wish there was a little bit more talk, though.
Right. The World Cup was nice to occupy our minds. And then after that, Lakers, that starts. And let's not forget Man U starts. The fall is it, man. And if you're a baseball fan, too, man, I have no problems with baseball. But just get me closer to when it's the Fall Classic. These months are brutal for me. I think this week, by the way, is the All-Star game. Did you hear the big guns aren't in the home run derby?
Yeah.
Juan Carlos Stanton and
Remind me to tell you a story
Aaron
after
Judge. I'm like, what the fuck? I know that a lot of guys only like to do the NBA All-Star dunk contest once or twice. They say they want to save their legs for the spring run, the playoff runs. I think that's something Jordan started years ago. But if you look, a lot of the guys that have won it, they'll do it 1 year, maybe 2, and then that's it. All right, we are out of here. For Danny Okers, who's got himself a brand new phone. I'm sure he's tickled to death. And Dan Tom, who's always tickled to death. What's that, 400 fights? Oh, that's the T-shirt we got, huh?
Yeah.
That's right. I thought it was like the Vegas 400, the NASCAR race or something.
It looks like a NASCAR shirt, doesn't it?
Yeah,
doesn't it?
All right, so for those two and goes, I'm George. Have a nice day. Go out there and, hey, John Morgan. Go out there and be a champion, folks.
Viva!